Chapter 867. The crisp sound of the slap spread far and wide outside the 10,000 formation cave. Then, Su Shan's pitiful cries could be heard. Pa! Then, Lu Ming turned his hand and slapped Su Shan again. Su Shan was sent flying and heavily fell to the ground. Both sides of his face were swollen, and he was beyond recognition. The surrounding onlookers were stunned, including Bai Qi and Xue. Compared to martial artists, a duel between inscription masters was not as violent. There were very few people who would directly go on stage and slap others. This was the first time they had seen such a scene. You dare hit young Master Su? You're finished, you're finished. One of the youths who came with Su Shan pointed at Lu Ming and shouted. Lu Ming's hand moved and a 9 extreme sword array appeared in his hand. He stared at the two youths and said, "What? Do you want to try? You're despicable. You're cheating. You didn't use an inscription scroll that you refined yourself. What kind of skill is that?" One of the youths shouted. When he saw the inscription scroll in Lu Ming's hand, he retreated again and again. Liao Tsong was deathly pale. They didn't think that Lu Ming would have such a high-level inscription scroll in his hands. They also didn't think that Lu Ming would be so shameless to use such an inscription scroll. They believed that such a high-level inscription scroll must have been bought by Lu Ming. It was impossible for him to refine it himself. There was an unwritten rule between inscription masters. In a fair duel between two inscription masters, one could not use an inscription scroll refined by another. That would not be a competition of strength, but a competition of wealth. Only in a life-and-death battle would one use it. Moreover, wanting to activate a high-level inscription scroll was not a simple matter. Who said I didn't refine it myself? Lu Ming curled his lips. This was clearly something that he had refined himself. You're shameless. Let's go, one of the youths said. Then, he helped the dizzy Su Shan up and hurriedly left. The surrounding onlookers also shook their heads and looked at Lu Ming with disdain. They didn't believe that Lu Ming, this kid who had come out of nowhere, would be able to refine a 6th level 9th level inscription symbol scroll. Youths who could refine level 6 level 9 inscriptions were the top 300 geniuses on the list of top 1,000 talents. They were as famous as the martial arts geniuses who had awakened the god-level bloodline. How could this unknown brat be a god-tier prodigy? Moreover, Lu Ming's martial arts were obviously not weak. Smashing a puppet at the 6th layer of the spiritual ocean tier into a pile of scrap metal with one slap, he obviously had high attainments in martial arts. Since the martial way was so profound, then it was impossible for the way of inscription to be so strong. If one were to say that Lu Ming was so strong in both aspects, then they wouldn't believe it even if they were beaten to death. Let's go. Lu Ming was disinclined to pay attention to the gazes of the surrounding people. He called out to Bai Qi and Snow, and then flew forward. Bai Qi Snow blinked her big eyes and followed him. Tianyun, I didn't expect your martial cultivation to be so powerful. You can shatter a Class 6 LV6 puppet with a single slap. What level has your martial cultivation reached? Are you practicing both martial arts and inscription? Along the way, Bai Qi Snow was extremely curious and asked several questions in a whisper. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and hurried on, too lazy to answer. Tianyun, Su Shan's elder brother, is a god-tier prodigy, ranked 299th on the list of top 1,000 talents. This time, you beat Su Shan, so his elder brother, the rising sun, may cause trouble for you. You have to be careful. Bai Qi Snow reminded him. Oh, is that so? Lu Ming nodded casually. After that, the two of them didn't go anywhere else and directly returned to Cloud Peak residence. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. On this day, Lu Ming was inscribing inscriptions in the yard. After a few days of inscribing practice, Lu Ming's inscribing speed had become faster. It only took 20 minutes to inscribe a talisman scroll of the 9-level sword array. This speed was extremely amazing. If it were to spread out, it would scare a group of people to death. Beside him, Bai Qi Snow opened her eyes wide and stared at it without blinking, trying to extract what she needed from it. Before long, Lu Ming had inscribed another talisman scroll. Tianyun, with your inscribing speed and 100% success rate, even if you don't do anything else, you will make a fortune just by selling inscription talismans. Bai Qi Snow said with her eyes shining. How could others inscribe inscription talismans so fast? Moreover, they would fail and waste materials. Unlike Lu Ming, who didn't want any materials and only used talisman paper. With a 100% success rate, it would be strange if he didn't make a fortune. Lu Ming nodded. This was a good way to make money. In the future, when he lacked raw stones, he could consider refining inscription talismans to sell. The two of them chatted. From time to time, Lu Ming would guide Bai Chi Snow in refining. Hundreds of thousands of miles away from Cloud Peak residence, there was another mountain peak. On the mountain peak, there was also a courtyard. This courtyard was the courtyard of the god-level genius Rising Sunday. In the courtyard, Su Shan was crying in front of the rising sun. Big brother, you finally came out of seclusion. You must avenge me. That Tianyun is simply lawless and arrogant. Su Shan shouted. You mean that kid called Tianyun lives in Cloud Peak residence? The rising sun coldly said. His eyes were filled with killing intent and thick jealousy. Yes, big brother. I was fighting injustice for you, so I went to find that kid Tianyun to get the hell out of Cloud Peak residence. I didn't expect that he would use a 6th level 9th layer inscription talisman to plot against me. Big brother, you must avenge me. Su Shan cried out pitifully and miserably. Don't worry. That guy actually dared to live in Cloud Peak residence. I will break his legs and make him get the hell out of Cloud Peak residence. The rising sun said. Dong. At this moment, a melodious bell sounded. This bell sound came from the center of the talisman puppet sect. It seemed to be able to cross the endless space and spread throughout the entire Twin Forms mountain region. This is the signal bell. When the signal bell rings, it means that the sect has something important to report. Su Shan and the rising sun's expressions changed. Then, the two of them each took out a voice transmission jade talisman. When the signal bell rang, the sect would report something important to each disciple's voice transmission jade talisman. When the two of them saw the content of the voice transmission jade talisman, their expressions changed drastically. How is this possible? How is this possible? How can that Tianyun become a Zongzi candidate? Su Shan screamed in disbelief. The content of the voice transmission jade talisman was the news that the upper echelon of the talisman puppet sect wanted Tianyun to be promoted to a Zongzi candidate. Tianyun. The Tianyun who lived in Cloud Peak residence? The rising sun also widened his eyes in disbelief. That's right, it's him. How is this possible? How is this possible? Su Shan was still in disbelief. It was extremely difficult to become a Zongzi candidate. One had to obtain the approval of more than 60% of the founding elders of the Talisman faction and the Puppet faction before they could ascend to the throne of a Zongzi candidate. In the future, they would have a chance to compete for the position of Zongzi and eventually take charge of the Talisman Puppet sect. Chapter 868. Damn it, who is this Tianyun? How is he qualified to be a Zongzi candidate? Damn it! Rising Sun yelled. It was Rising Sun's dream to become a Zongzi candidate. He had been working hard for it, but now it was taken by a stranger. He was so jealous that he was about to go crazy. At this moment, the entire Talisman Puppet sect was confused. Who is Tianyun? Where did he come from? How is he qualified to be a Zongzi candidate? The elite's eyes lit up. Especially those who were ranked in the top 300 of the list of top 1,000 talents. They were all competing for the Zongzi candidate, but now it was taken by a stranger. How could they be convinced? I'd like to see how capable this Tianyun is to become a Zongzi candidate. Go and find out more about this Tianyun. Everyone in Liangyi Mountain was shocked by the name Tianyun. In Yun Peak residence, Bai Qi stared blankly at the voice transmission jade talisman in his hand, then stared at Lu Ming for a long time before he said, "You still say that you're not Master's illegitimate son, but now you're a Zongzi candidate." Lu Ming was speechless. What is this? Don't tell me everyone has been notified? Lu Ming asked. More or less. Almost all the Talisman Puppet sect disciples in Liangyi Mountain have received the news. Bai Qi said. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and touched his nose. Is there a need to make such a big fuss? Lu Ming knew that there would be a lot of trouble in this way. These guys are deliberately making trouble for me. Lu Ming sighed in his heart. He understood that Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others were doing this on purpose. It was equivalent to indirectly challenging him. He was a stranger who had appeared out of nowhere, and was appointed as a Zongzi candidate. How could those prodigies be convinced? They would definitely cause trouble for him. This was the test. Forget it, I'll deal with it as it comes. At most, I'll go into seclusion and not come out. Lu Ming felt a headache coming on. He was not afraid of those people, but he was afraid of trouble. Hey, you haven't answered me. Are you Master's illegitimate son or not? Bai Qi's eyes widened, and he continued to ask curiously. Lu Ming was speechless. Stop guessing, I didn't cultivate in the Talisman Puppet Sect. You didn't cultivate in the Talisman Puppet Sect? Then where did you cultivate? In the territory of Emperor's territory? Bai Qi asked curiously. Something like that. Lu Ming said casually. Really? Are you really cultivating in the territory of the Emperor Heavenly Divine Palace? Do you know Lu? Bai Qi Xue became excited and asked a few questions. No. Lu Ming's heart jumped and he hurriedly denied it. You don't know Lu Ming? Humph, you're so ignorant. You don't even know Lu Ming. In the Battle of Nine Dragon City, Lu Ming pulled out the Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron and fought against 3 supreme martial artists. It was said that one of the supreme martial artists was almost killed by him. Even Martial Emperor De took action. How can you not know such a person? He's my idol now. Bai Qi looked at Lu Ming with disdain, and then looked at the sky with a smitten look. This. Lu Ming was confused. Lu Ming is a peerless genius in my heart. He's comparable to the top 10 on the list of top 1,000 talents. Those people like the rising sun are far from him. Tianyun, although you're good, you're still far behind Lu Ming. Keep working hard. Bai Qi patted Lu Ming on the shoulder with a look of encouragement. This. I'll work hard, work hard. Lu Ming's face was covered in cold sweat. At this moment, a Talisman Puppet Sect elder arrived, and Lu Ming heaved a sigh of relief. The elder was here to give Lu Ming the token that represented the candidate Xueqi. With this token, Lu Ming could enter most places in the Talisman Puppet Sect at will, except for some important forbidden areas. In the next 2 days, Liangyi Mountain was very lively. Everyone was talking about Tianyun. However, no one dared to cause trouble for Lu Ming. They seemed to be waiting for someone else to go first and test the waters. 2 days later, Lu Ming left Cloud Peak residence and headed to Treasure Pavilion. 7 days had passed, and he went to collect the blood essence of the demonic beasts. Tianyun, that's Tianyun. Lu Ming was recognized as soon as he arrived at Treasure Pavilion. He's Tianyun? He's so young. What does he have to be a candidate Xueqi? You don't know? But he must be outstanding in some way. Otherwise, why would the elders agree? I think he might be a disciple secretly groomed by one of the elders. He only appeared now that the Battle of Providence is about to begin. That's possible. There was a lot of discussion in the surroundings. Many people looked at Lu Ming curiously. Some of them were kind, but most of them were jealous. Lu Ming simply ignored these gazes and went to the counter that he had visited previously. Young master, you're Tianyun? The young lady at the counter widened her eyes and looked at Lu Ming curiously. If there's no one else, it's me. Pretty lady, have you collected the blood essence of the demonic beasts? Lu Ming asked. Yes, they're all here. Take a look. The young lady handed a storage ring to Lu Ming. Lu Ming took it and scanned it with his mind to confirm that it was correct. Then, Lu Ming paid 2,500 origin stones, put away the blood essence of the demonic beasts, and walked out. Tianyun, stop. A cold shout sounded, and 2 figures blocked Lu Ming's way. Su Shan. Lu Ming saw at a glance that one of them was Su Shan. The other person looked somewhat similar to Su Shan. His eyes shone with sharpness. It's the rising sun. It seems that the rising sun can't help but make the first move. Of course, all the elites are watching. Someone must make the first move. Su Shan was beaten by Tianyun a few days ago, and the rising sun has been pursuing Bai Qi Xue. It's reasonable for him to make the first move. Finally, I can see what's so special about this Tianyun. In the 100 Treasure Pavilion, there was a lot of discussion. Everyone looked at Lu Ming with bright eyes. So this is the rising sun. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Tianyun, you finally dare to appear. Let's see where you can go today. Su Shan said coldly, staring at Lu Ming fiercely. That day, he was slapped twice by Lu Ming in public, and now he had become a joke. He hated Lu Ming to the core. What's wrong? Do you want your face to be swollen again? Lu Ming glanced at Su Shan, causing Su Shan's face to change, and he took a step back. Humph. Tianyun, I want to see what ability you have. How dare you hit my brother? Move into Yunfeng residence and become a Zongzi candidate. The rising sun stepped out. A blue light shone between his eyebrows, and a huge mental strength spread out. Do you want your face to be swollen too? Lu Ming looked at the rising sun. This made the rising sun's face turn ugly. An even more violent mental strength spread out from between his eyebrows, stirring up a mental strength storm in the hall. No fighting is allowed in the 100 Treasure Pavilion. Chapter 869. In the 100 Treasure Pavilion, an expert warned. Rising Sun's expression changed and he quickly withdrew his mental strength. Tianyun, if you have the ability, go to the inscription battle arena and have a fair battle with me. Rising Sun stared at Lu Ming. The inscription battle arena was the place where the disciples of the Talisman Puppet sect competed. Not interested, Lu Ming said and strode away. During this period, the Nine Dragons bloodline had been weak. Lu Ming was worried that there would be repercussions and had long wanted to try devouring the blood essence. Now that he had finally obtained the blood essence, he couldn't wait to go back and test it out. How could he be in the mood to compete on the inscription battle arena? If he could deal with it here, he wouldn't mind doing it. Lu Ming left the 100 Treasure Pavilion and flew directly to Cloud Peak residence. Humph, he's just a coward. What right does he have to become a Zongzi candidate? Rising Sun snorted when he saw Lu Ming leaving. Who knows how Tianyun managed to become a Zongzi candidate? He's clearly afraid of you, big brother, and doesn't dare to fight with you. Once you do, he'll give himself away. Su Shan sneered. In the main hall of the 100 Treasure Pavilion, others also shook their heads. They thought that Lu Ming didn't dare to compete with Rising Sunday. And such rumors spread throughout the Yinyang Mountain through the 100 Treasure Pavilion. After Lu Ming returned to Cloud Peak residence, he went straight to his room and sat down cross-legged. A jade bottle appeared in his hand. There were 9 pearl-like drops of demonic beast blood essence in it. Grade 6 LV6 demonic beast blood essence. With a thought, the 9 dragons bloodline emerged. 9 silver chakras appeared around the 9 dragons bloodline. However, the light was dim and the 9 dragons bloodline seemed to be weak. Lu Ming controlled the 9 dragons bloodline and sucked the 9 drops of demonic beast blood essence into his mouth. He began to refine them. Slowly, as the power of the beast's blood was absorbed by the 9 dragons bloodline, the 9 silver chakras became brighter and brighter. 2 hours later, the first blood essence was refined. Lu Ming took out a Class 6 LV6 demonic beast's blood essence and refined it. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. Lu Ming continuously refined more than 10 portions of the blood essence of the demonic beasts. Finally, the 9 dragons bloodline regained its vigor. The 9 silver chakras shone brightly and the speed of refining the blood essence also increased by a notch. Lu Ming continued refining. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. In 4 days, Lu Ming had refined all 56 level grade blood essences, but his 9 dragons bloodline still hadn't reached the divine grade. What's going on? 50 blood essences of 6th level beasts are not enough for me to level up. I was able to reach the God realm before I devoured so much blood essences. But now, I've already devoured more blood essences than before. Why haven't I leveled up yet? Lu Ming furrowed his brows. He was worried that the 9 dragons bloodline wouldn't level up because of the explosion of the chakras. That would be a great loss. Impossible. It must be because I haven't devoured enough blood essence. Keep devouring. Lu Ming gritted his teeth, took out a Class 7 LV6 demonic beast's blood essence, and continued to devour and refine it. The blood essence of a Class 7 LV6 demonic beast was 4 or 5 times thicker than that of a Class 6 LV6 demonic beast. Lu Ming continued to devour the blood essence. Lu Ming was so focused on refining the blood essence that he was oblivious to what was going on outside. In the past few days, Tianyun's name had spread like wildfire in Liangyi Mountain. On the second day of Lu Ming's closed-door cultivation, other geniuses ranked in the top 300 on the list of top 1,000 talents challenged Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming didn't accept the challenge. Subsequently, rumors about Lu Ming not daring to accept the challenge and that he was weak spread like wildfire. Some geniuses even went to Cloud Peak residence to challenge Lu Ming. However, Bai Xueqi used the excuse that Lu Ming was in closed-door cultivation to activate the formation of Cloud Peak residence and turned Lu Ming away. Thus, The rumors that Lu Ming was cowardly and incompetent became even louder. Some people even suggested to the Elder Council that Lu Ming be stripped of his position as Zongzi candidate and move out of Cloud Peak residence. However, the suggestion was rejected. Many geniuses gritted their teeth and waited for Lu Ming to appear and defeat Lu Ming in public. Then, they would see if Lu Ming would still have the face to continue being a Zongzi candidate. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been in closed-door cultivation for 7 days. Lu Ming had refined 10 more Class 7 LV6 blood essences. At this time, Lu Ming finally felt that the 9 Dragons bloodline was about to evolve. This time, the amount of blood essence consumed is several times more than the previous time. Is this the after effect? However, as long as it can evolve, it's worth it. No matter how much blood essence is consumed, it's worth it. A smile appeared on Lu Ming's face. However, evolving the divine bloodline will cause too much of a commotion. I have to find a secret place to do so. I'll ask Bai Qi if there's a secret place. Thinking of this, Lu Ming went out of the room and saw Bai Qi frowning and in a daze. Qi, why are you in a daze? Lu Ming walked over and said with a smile. It's all because of you. During this period, everyone came to challenge you. You hid and cultivated, but I sent them all away. Bai Qi glared at Lu Ming and pouted. Challenge me? I knew it. Lu Ming smiled. He had long known that many people would come to challenge him. It would be strange if they didn't. What's your plan? Are you going to go out and fight with them? Bai Qi asked. I'm not free now. I have to go into seclusion for a while. When I come out, I'll deal with them together, Lu Ming said with a smile. Deal with them together? You're very confident. Among them there are close to the top 100 geniuses. Although the Talisman Puppet sect is not as strong as the Emperor God Divine Palace and the Heavenly Corpse sect, there are still more than 30 geniuses ranked between 100 and 300 on the list of top 1,000 talents. These are all your opponents. Can you deal with them? Bai Qi obviously didn't believe him. It's okay. Lu Ming smiled and asked, Is there a quieter place here where no one will disturb us? Where even if there is a commotion, there won't be a big impact on us. Yes, the Wind Marshal Cave. It's not very useful for the cultivation of the Way of Inscription, so very few people go there. Moreover, it's full of caves. Just pick one and no one will know no matter how big the commotion is. Bai Qi said. Okay, the Wind Marshal Cave it is. I'll go into seclusion for a while. After saying that, Lu Ming left Cloud Peak residence. According to the map, he turned into a beam of light and flew toward the Wind Marshal Cave. The Wind Marshal Cave was hundreds of thousands of miles away. With Lu Ming's speed, he soon arrived. The Wind Marshal Cave was full of jagged rocks. Here, there were huge rocky mountains that were more than 10,000 meters high. There were huge caves on the mountains, and the wind was blowing out from each cave. Lu Ming rushed in, randomly chose a cave, and flew in. Although Lu Ming was fast, the news that he had entered the Wind Marshal Cave was still discovered by others. Soon, the news spread throughout Liangyi Mountain. Finally, Cloud Peak residence. Chapter 870. However, when they arrived at the Wind Marshal Cave, they all stopped outside. The Wind Marshal Cave was extremely wide and had thousands of caves. No one knew which cave Lu Ming had entered, so they could only wait outside. Lu Ming entered a cave and went deeper. What rich spiritual qi! Lu Ming's eyes flashed with surprise as he ran forward. The spiritual qi in the cave was extremely rich. However, the Talisman Puppet sect mainly cultivated the Tao of Inscription, and the spiritual qi was not very useful. Therefore, very few people came to the Wind Marshal Cave. Lu Ming came to an underground cave after tens of thousands of meters. Then, Lu Ming waved his hands and inscriptions entered the surroundings, setting up a large array. This large array was mainly used to isolate sound so that when he broke through, there would be too much noise. After inscribing the large array, Lu Ming sat down cross-legged. Let's upgrade the 9 Dragons bloodline in one go. Lu Ming waved his hand. This time, he took out 10 portions of blood essence of level 7 level 6 demonic beasts. The 9 Dragons bloodline opened its mouth and roared. It devoured the 10 portions of blood essence and began to refine them. The rich power of blood essence continued to flow into the 9 Dragons bloodline. A day later, the 9 Suns bloodline roared to the sky. The roar of a dragon echoed in the cave, isolating the sound in the cave. Roar! The Nine Dragons' bloodline's body continued to grow. Originally, the Nine Dragons' bloodline had turned into a flood dragon with 4 dragon claws on its abdomen. But now, the 5th dragon claw stretched out. It had turned into the appearance of a real dragon. However, this was not the end. After the 5th dragon claw stretched out, the 6th dragon claw stretched out. Lu Ming's eyes widened in shock. The upgrade this time was different from the previous one. After the 6th dragon claw stretched out, the dragon roar became louder and the aura of the Nine Dragons' bloodline became stronger. Roar! After the roar, the 7th dragon claw stretched out, followed by the 8th and 9th dragon claw. A total of 9 dragon claws. 9 dragons. Lu Ming's bloodline had turned into the legendary 9 dragons. The 9-clawed true dragon, also known as the 9 dragons, was a mutated true dragon. It was incomparably powerful, far surpassing ordinary true dragons. It was a unique existence between heaven and earth, and was also one of the top 10 beasts that Dandan spoke of. After exploding his chakra, the 9 dragons' bloodline had evolved into the form of 9 dragons. This was the complete bloodline of the 9 dragons. After a moment of shock, Lu Ming was ecstatic. The 9 dragons roared as the 9 silver chakras merged into a golden chakra. A powerful dragon aura spread out and shook the heavens and earth. However, Liangyi Mountain had an extremely powerful array that completely isolated the 9 dragons' auras. Those outside Liangyi Mountain could not sense them. The power of devouring is several times stronger than when I was in my dragon form. Lu Ming sensed it and was overjoyed. He discovered that the devouring power of the 9 dragons was several times stronger than that of the true dragon form. This time, it was really a blessing in disguise. After his 9 dragons' bloodline exploded his chakra, he unexpectedly awakened the perfect 9 dragons form. Withdraw! With a thought, Lu Ming put away the 9 dragons' bloodline. He discovered that a stream of dragon power had condensed at his spine. I wonder what's the difference between this dragon force and the previous dragon force? Lu Ming pondered. Then with a thought, the dragon force burst out. A layer of purple gold scales appeared on Lu Ming's skin. It covered Lu Ming's body like a suit of armor. It looked abnormally demonic. What a powerful force! Lu Ming was shocked. He felt that his body was full of power. Boom! He threw out a punch. The space quickly condensed into a ball of terrifying energy and blasted forward. Oh no! Lu Ming's face changed. He activated the 9 dragon sky stomping steps and appeared in front of the ball of energy in an instant. He threw out a punch and blocked it. Boom! With a loud bang, Lu Ming's body shook violently and he took 8 steps back. So powerful, so powerful. Lu Ming was shocked. It was impossible to test it out here. Otherwise, the whole mountain would explode. However, Lu Ming could still feel the absolute power. This dragon force was definitely stronger than the previous one. It was at least several times stronger. When the dragon force burst out, Lu Ming's attack and defense would be greatly enhanced. The previous dragon force was the real dragon force. However, the current dragon force could be said to be the 9 dragons force. It was normal for it to be more powerful. Martial Emperor DE, you didn't expect that my exploding chakra would help me in the end. It allowed me to exert the power of the 9 dragons' bloodline to the extreme. Lu Ming's eyes shone brightly and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. However, to transform into the 9 dragons form, I'm afraid that I'll need more essence blood. I still need 30 portions of Class 6 LV7 essence blood. I'll upgrade the prison-suppressing steel bloodline first. When the prison-suppressing steel bloodline is upgraded to Class 3 divine level, I'll upgrade the 9 dragons bloodline. Thinking of this, Lu Ming took out more essence blood and started to devour it. After the upgrade of the 9 dragons bloodline, the devouring and refining power reached a terrifying level. The speed of refining the essence blood of the demonic beasts became faster. 30 portions of Class 6 LV7 essence blood were all refined in a few hours. Bas! The prison-suppressing steel bloodline vibrated and shone brightly. 2 golden chakras shone brightly. Suddenly, a golden chakra appeared above the 2 golden chakras. 3 golden chakras and a Class 3 divine level bloodline. When the prison-suppressing steel bloodline was upgraded to Class 3 divine level, the power of the heaven-suppressing prison skill would also increase. It would reach the highest level of an upper demigod martial skill. Now that I'm using my full strength and the dragon force, how strong will my attack be? Lu Ming was looking forward to it. The prison-suppressing steel bloodline floated in the air. Lu Ming stepped on the ground and merged with the earth. What's this feeling? Lu Ming was shocked. He quickly closed his eyes and started to comprehend. Just now, when the prison-suppressing steel bloodline was upgraded, he was connected to the earth and suddenly felt something. This was a kind of inspiration. Some people said that it was a kind of enlightenment. It required a coincidence to capture this feeling and enter a mysterious state. Such a fortuitous encounter was hard to come by. Lu Ming closed his eyes. He seemed to sink into the depths of the earth and become one with it. He was the earth and the earth was him. The earth was thick, vast, vicissitudes of life. The earth was quiet and eternal. It could accommodate all things. It could suppress all things and bury the heavens and earth. This was an extremely powerful intent realm. Just like this, Lu Ming immersed himself in comprehending the intent realm. Time passed slowly. 1 day, 2 days. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Lu Ming immersed himself in comprehending the intent realm. It had been 5 days. His comprehension of the intent realm had increased by leaps and bounds. Not only did he break through to Class 2 greater success, but he was also approaching Class 2 greater perfection. 5 days was comparable to months of hard work. At this time, there was a sea of people outside the Wind Marshal Cave. Many sky prides had rushed here to wait for Lu Ming to come out. There were even more people who were here to watch the show. Humph. I'll wait here. Let's see how long this Lu Ming can hide. Chapter 871. Look, Ji Mai, ranked 107th on the list of top 1,000 talents, is here too. And senior brother Yan Tunghua, ranked 115th. Senior sister Meng Jia, ranked 118th. Someone exclaimed when they saw 3 extraordinary geniuses. These 3 geniuses were the closest to the top 100 geniuses in the Talisman Puppet sect and were the most qualified candidates for the Zongzi position. The 3 of them were expressionless with their eyes closed. They sat on a huge rock and waited quietly. Bai Qixue had also heard the news and rushed over. She looked anxious. Although she knew that Lu Ming was very powerful and could refine a level 6 9th tier inscription talisman, which of the top 300 god-level prodigies on the list of top 1,000 talents could not refine a level 6 9th tier inscription talisman? Especially the geniuses of the puppet sect, who could control powerful puppets and had strong combat strength. She did not think that Lu Ming could compete with such geniuses. Tianyun, stay in the Wind Marshal Cave for a while. Don't come out. Bai Qixue prayed in her heart. After 5 days of cultivation, Lu Ming opened his eyes in the Wind Marshal Cave. What an opportunity! You can only come across it by chance. Lu Ming smiled. However, Lu Ming did not plan to go out. Lu Ming's 4 essences of heaven and earth had all reached greater mastery of level 2. He could continue to improve his cultivation. Lu Ming intended to increase his cultivation level before leaving this place. He sat cross-legged and waved his hand. A pile of origin stones appeared on the ground and the 9 dragons' bloodline appeared. He opened his mouth and inhaled. At least 200 origin stones exploded and the origin chi was devoured by the 9 dragons' bloodline. Origin chi was the chi of heaven and earth. It was many times more powerful than spiritual chi. His spiritual chi churned and his true essence kept increasing. Soon, 200 origin stones were refined, and another 200 were devoured. Rumble. His true essence churned like a tsunami. After half a day, the rumbling stopped. 7th level spiritual chi. Lu Ming broke through to the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier in one go, and the area of his spiritual ocean doubled again. However, Lu Ming didn't stop and continued to refine the source stone. After another half a day, Lu Ming's cultivation rose to the peak of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and only then did he stop cultivating. In total, he had consumed 3,000 origin stones. Fortunately, I have the wealth left behind by Senior Jiuyang. Otherwise, it would be really difficult to move forward. Lu Ming smiled. It was time to go out. He had been in seclusion at Wind Marshal Cave for exactly 8 days. In these 8 days, his strength had risen to a terrifying height. With a faint smile, Lu Ming walked out. When he exited the Feng Wu Cave, Lu Ming was stunned. Outside, there was a dense crowd of people surrounding the Wind Marshal Cave. Nest, aren't these people too proactive? Are you all waiting for me here? With a thought, Lu Ming guessed what was going on. He was speechless. Tianyun came out. The moment Lu Ming came out, someone shouted. Countless pairs of eyes looked at Lu Ming in unison. So young, very ordinary. I thought he had 3 heads and 6 arms. Not ordinary, don't you think he's very handsome? Pay, love-struck fool, get lost. Instantly, a burst of miscellaneous discussions sounded out. There were many young girls whose eyes shone, feeling that Lu Ming was very handsome, which attracted the displeasure of many young men. Shua! A figure strode out and arrived in front of Lu Ming, his gaze dark as he said, Tianyun, you finally came out. I thought you were going to hide like a coward. Today, I'll see where you're going to run. The one who spoke was Rising Sunday. He was the first one who couldn't help but step forward. Lu Ming glanced at him and said indifferently, Looks like I didn't beat you last time, and you're really itching for a beating. Fine, I'll fulfill your wish today. After saying that, Lu Ming strode forward. Today, there were so many people gathered here, so he would make an example out of him so that he wouldn't be annoyed to death by these people. You're courting death. Rising Sun's eyes turned cold. With a wave of his hand, 7 huge puppets appeared in front of him. Among them, 3 were equivalent to the 9th layer of the spiritual sea realm, and 4 were equivalent to the peak of the 8th layer. The 7 puppets together were equivalent to the peak of the 9th layer of the spiritual sea realm. Rising Sun could be ranked in the top 300 of the list of top 1,000 talents and was called a god-level genius, so his battle strength was definitely not weak. Being able to control 7 powerful puppets at once, his battle strength was definitely not inferior to Wang Haoxian and Long Qianli's. The 7 puppets roared and pounced on Lu Ming. Tianyun, watch out! Bai Qi shouted in the crowd. Lu Ming smiled slightly, and without stopping, he slapped out. This stunned many people. Lu Ming actually wanted to fight the puppets with his flesh and blood? Many people sneered in their hearts. Puppets were made of all kinds of hard and powerful metals and were invulnerable. How could flesh and blood resist them? But in the next moment, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Bang! Lu Ming slapped a puppet at the peak of the 8th layer of the spiritual sea realm. This puppet, which weighed millions of kilograms, was directly sent flying and exploded into a pile of scrap iron in the air. Bang! Bang! Lu Ming used both his hands and feet like a terrifying god of war. With a punch, a puppet exploded. With a kick, a puppet exploded. Whether it was a puppet at the peak of the 8th or 9th layer of the spiritual sea realm, they all ended up the same. In an instant, they turned into a pile of scrap iron. Countless people rubbed their eyes hard, thinking that they were dreaming. How could this be? How could this be? Inscribers focused on cultivating spiritual flames. The strength of their bodies was much weaker than that of martial artists. They had never seen such a direct, domineering, and violent method of battle. They had directly used their bodies to crush their puppets and turn them into scrap metal. Lu Ming strode forward, charging towards the Rising Sun. Impossible? How could this be? Rising Sun roared, and an inscription scroll appeared in his hand. As soon as he opened it, a battle sword appeared, slashing down towards Lu Ming's head. This inscription scroll had the attack power of the peak of the 9th layer of the spiritual sea realm. But Lu Ming waved his hand, and the battle sword collapsed. Lu Ming's figure instantly appeared in front of the Rising Sun, slapping out. Pa! The crisp sound of the slap resounded throughout the whole place. Many people felt their gums ache, and Rising Sun screamed even more. His teeth flew out mixed with blood, and half of his face swelled up high. Pa! With a flip of his hand, he gave Xueqi another slap, causing him to become dizzy and disorientated. Then he kicked out, and Rising Sun flew out, lying on the ground and screaming like a dead fish. Many people gasped. This Tianyun was too overbearing and violent. He defeated the Rising Sun so easily. After all, the Rising Sun was a god-level genius. How dare you, Tianyun? How could you be so vicious and injure your fellow disciples? You're guilty. A genius stronger than the Rising Sun yelled. Don't talk nonsense. If you want to fight, then fight. If you don't, then get lost. Lu Ming looked towards the source of the voice. It was a young man with a jade crown on his head. He was fair and clean. To put it simply, he was a pretty boy. Guan Rong, ranked 259th on the list of top 1,000 talents. Chapter 872. Ranked 259 on the list of top 1,000 talents, he was much stronger than the Rising Sun. How arrogant. Let me defeat you. Guanrong's face darkened at Lu Ming's rebuke. He strode forward, and with every step, dense runes appeared on the ground. Roar! A ferocious tiger condensed and pounced on Lu Ming. After the tiger, there were also giant bears, pythons, and other beasts. In an instant, more than a dozen beasts pounced on Lu Ming. Guanrong's array Dao was extremely terrifying to be able to set up so many arrays in an instant. His use of the spiritual fire had also reached the peak of the nuance realm, which was on par with Lu Ming. As these beasts pounced on Lu Ming, Guanrong waved his hand and 3 inscription scrolls appeared in front of him. The 3 inscriptions were activated at the same time, and 3 dragons roared and pounced. Their attack power was equivalent to the peak of the 9th level of the spiritual sea realm. This kind of attack was like a storm. An ordinary martial artist at the 9th level of the spiritual sea realm would be submerged and torn to pieces. The fighting style of an inscription master was completely different from that of a martial artist. Lu Ming was expressionless. He strode forward and struck out with his palm. The space rumbled violently, and the beasts that pounced on him collapsed instantly. What followed were the 3 dragons. Boom, boom, boom. 4 kinds of realm of heaven and earth wrapped around him. He activated the hell-suppressing heaven skill at 20% power and clashed with the 3 dragons. Lu Ming did not dare to activate the hell-suppressing heaven skill at full power. Its power was equivalent to the 6th level of an upper-grade demigod martial skill, and the consumption of true essence was extremely terrifying. With Lu Ming's current cultivation, if he used it at full power, his true essence would be drained in a few moves. With 3 roars, the 3 dragons were defeated. Guanrong's pupils contracted sharply. In an instant, an array appeared on his body and formed a pair of wings. With a flap of his wings, he retreated like a bolt of lightning. At the same time, he waved his hand and 5 inscription scrolls appeared in front of him. 2 of them transformed into halos that enveloped Guanrong's body. These were protective talismans that were indestructible. Of the other 3 inscription scrolls, 2 of them condensed into 2 battle swords and slashed towards Lu Ming. They also had the power of the peak of the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. The most shocking thing was that the inscription scroll in the middle condensed into a long spear and stabbed towards Lu Ming. The power emitted by this long spear was terrifying and shocking, exceeding the range of the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. If it had to be categorized, it was a 6th level inscription charm scroll. Lu Ming's expression turned grave. He condensed 2 spears in his hands and shot them out, colliding with the 2 swords. His palm landed on the spear. Explode! Lu Ming growled as the spear exploded. Lu Ming used the 9 dragons' heaven-stomping steps and appeared in front of Guanrong in just a few steps. His palm was like a sharp sword, piercing forward. Puff, puff. The 2 light screens in front of Guanrong shattered like paper. No! Guanrong screamed and retreated like lightning, but Lu Ming was faster and followed closely behind. He stretched out his palm and grabbed Guanrong's throat. True essence shook, and Guanrong's body went soft like mud. Lu Ming swung his hand, and Guanrong fell heavily to the ground beside the rising sun. All around, everyone stared in shock. This Lu Ming was too strong. He defeated Guanrong with such ease. This made the other geniuses' expressions turn ugly. Haven't you waited for a long time? If you want to fight, then hurry up and come at me together. I don't have that much time to play with you. Lu Ming looked around and said coldly. Lu Ming planned to establish his power today. Arrogant, too arrogant. You think you're invincible after defeating the rising sun and Guanrong? Ridiculous. Since he wants to die, let's fight him together. Let's see how strong he is. Cold voices rang out. One by one, figures stepped forward, and a powerful spiritual storm erupted and filled the area. There were more than a dozen god-level geniuses who were ranked in the top 300 of the list of top 1,000 talents. Some of them were even ranked in the top 200. However, Ji Mai, Yen Tunghua, and Meng Jia did not step forward. Instead, they watched from afar. Obviously, the 3 of them did not want to join forces to fight Lu Ming. Cut the crap. Let's fight. Lu Ming's eyes were full of fighting spirit. He had made great progress this time and wanted to fight. Arrogant. Let's fight together. With a cold shout, more than 50 huge puppets appeared on the ground. The weakest puppet was equivalent to the 9th level of the spiritual sea realm, while the strongest puppet was far stronger. The puppet roared furiously. It stomped on the ground and pounced on Lu Ming. Some of them had inscription scrolls appear in front of them. Dazzling light emanated from these scrolls, emitting a terrifying aura. Good timing. The fighting spirit in Lu Ming's eyes grew stronger. The power of the 9 dragons in his 9 dragons bloodline burst out, and a layer of purple gold scales appeared on his body. What's that? Many people gasped. A secret skill of martial arts. Someone said. Boom. Lu Ming stomped on the ground, and the rocks exploded. Lu Ming rushed out. Boom. Boom. His fists punched out continuously, colliding with the puppets. Bang. 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 The sound of explosions rose and fell. The puppets in the 9th level of the spiritual sea realm exploded like fragile balloons. Lu Ming's battle strength was too terrifying when he combined the dragon power with the prison-suppressing heaven steel. Not only puppets at the 9th level of the spiritual sea realm, even those puppets above the 9th level of the spiritual sea realm would be blown apart. Such a scene was incomparably terrifying. The inscription scrolls glowed, and all kinds of powerful attacks poured down on Lu Ming. There were endless flames, lightning, storms, battle swords, saber auras, and so on. Every one of them was extremely terrifying, far surpassing the 9th level of the spiritual sea realm. The battle strength of these prodigies all surpassed the peak of the 9th level of the spiritual sea realm. Ordinary 9th level spiritual sea realm experts would be blasted into dregs in an instant. However, Lu Ming was fearless. His body was covered in dragon scales and he was invulnerable. He charged forward and every inch of his body could release the hell-suppressing heaven skill. Those attacks exploded with a loud bang. Lu Ming broke through the layers of attacks and charged toward those elites. Not good retreat. More than a dozen prodigies' faces flashed with shock. Each of them used inscription arrays and retreated rapidly. At the same time, every step they took would leave inscriptions on the ground. At the same time, a large number of puppets and inscription scrolls appeared. This time, many puppets actually formed a large array. Together, their aura was even more shocking. Moreover, some people took out even more powerful inscription scrolls. These people were called god-level prodigies. Their battle strength was extremely terrifying, and they could compete with the prodigies of Emperor Heaven Divine Palace and Heavenly Corpse Sect. Naturally, they were very strong. But Lu Ming was even stronger. During the previous exchange meet in 9 Dragon City, Lu Ming's combat ability was already extremely terrifying. He was definitely able to fight against the top 200 people. This time, Lu Ming's Earth concept had a breakthrough. All 4 concepts had reached level 2 greater mastery. When they were combined and unleashed, their power was even stronger. At the same time, the power of the 9 dragons was also stronger. It was several times stronger than the dragon power in the past. Also, his cultivation level had increased to the peak of the 7th level of the spiritual sea realm. Now Lu Ming was completely confident that he could fight with Di Feng and Shurimo, who were ranked 101 and 102 on the list of top 1,000 prodigies. Chapter 873. Lu Ming's current combat strength was infinitely close to that of a spirit embryo realm expert. Lu Ming could even contend with an ordinary spirit embryo realm expert. Among the younger generation, he was unafraid of anyone other than the top 100 heavens prides on the list of top 1,000 talents. Boom! Lu Ming was like an Archean ferocious beast as he charged through the puppets violently, and savagely. Boom! 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 He used his berserk methods to break through the battle formation formed by the puppets. With a single punch, the weaker puppets were directly blown apart. The stronger puppets were also sent flying, their bodies deformed. Some of the flames and lightning were blocked by the scales on Lu Ming's skin. Bam! Lu Ming consecutively sent 9 powerful puppets flying and appeared in front of a puppet sex Heaven's Pride. The Heaven's Pride's eyes widened and he wanted to retreat, but Lu Ming hit him so hard that he vomited blood. He reached out and threw the Heaven's Pride to the side of the Rising Sun and Guan Rong. There were 3 figures lying on the ground, unable to get up. Bam! After dealing with this Heaven's Pride, Lu Ming leaped into the sky and destroyed 2 blazing fireballs, a thunder sword, and a dragon formed by ice. He appeared in front of a talisman sex pride and punched through the talisman defense. His vital essence surged into the Heaven's Pride, and the Heaven's Pride went limp. Lu Ming threw him to the side of the Rising Sun and the rest. Swoosh! In the next moment, Lu Ming used the 9 dragons' heaven stomping steps and attacked another Heaven's Pride at lightning speed. Lu Ming defeated all the puppets and inscription scrolls. One by one, The figures were sent flying by Lu Ming and fell to the side of the rising sun and the rest. The surrounding spectators were all dumbfounded. Their jaws were about to drop as they watched everything unfold in disbelief. More than 10 god-level prodigies joined forces, but in front of Lu Ming, they were unable to put up any resistance. They were completely crushed and sent flying one by one. Lu Ming threw them on the ground like rubbish and piled them up. In just a few minutes, more than a dozen people were thrown to the ground by Lu Ming. They were all furious and ashamed. "I admit defeat," some of the remaining Heaven's Pride shouted, wanting to admit defeat. They were truly frightened by Lu Ming's terrifying combat strength. "You want to fight, but you don't want to fight. How can there be such a good thing? I forbid it." Lu Ming's gaze was like lightning. His figure was like an ancient beast as he dashed toward the other party. Bam! Ah! Heaven's Pride was thrown to the ground to Heaven's Pride. Then, Lu Ming's figure flashed and another 2 Heaven's Prides were sent flying. "Tianyun, this is the Talisman Puppet Sect. What's the point of using martial arts to win? If you have the ability, use the Tao of Inscription." One of the last remaining Heaven's Pride shouted. However, just as he finished speaking, the puppet protecting him was sent flying by Lu Ming. He was also sent flying by Lu Ming's kick and smashed into the pile of Heaven's Prides, causing them to scream in pain. The scene quietened down. More than a dozen Heaven's Prides were piled together and roaring in anger. The surrounding Talisman Puppet Sect disciples were stunned, unable to believe what they were seeing. These were the few god-level Heaven's Prides of the Talisman Puppet Sect. Although the Talisman Puppet Sect's territory couldn't be compared to the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace, it still had more than 30 large regions. There were countless Heaven's Prides, but there were less than 50 god-level Heaven's Prides. Which of these Heaven's Prides wasn't high and mighty? They were like stars surrounding the moon, looking down on other people of the younger generation. But now, more than a dozen of them were piled together like a pile of trash. They were roaring in anger and screaming in pain. It was a tragic sight. This scene was too illusory and unreal. Slap. There were even people who slapped themselves to see if they were dreaming. Bai Xueqi was also dumbfounded. She didn't expect Lu Ming to be so powerful. More than a dozen Heaven's Prides were defeated in an instant. He was ridiculously powerful. She recalled the attitude she had towards Lu Ming when she first met him. Her heart couldn't help but beat faster. She was afraid. If Lu Ming went crazy, a weak woman like her wouldn't be able to withstand it. "This guy is so strong, but he didn't tell me." Humph. Bai Xueqi snorted coldly in her heart. Ji Mai, Yan Tunghua, and Meng Jia were also incomparably shocked. They looked at Lu Ming in shock. Lu Ming's strength was also beyond their expectations. The 3 of them were all ranked in the top 120 on the list of top 1,000 talents. Their combat strength was naturally terrifying. But they weren't confident that they could defeat more than a dozen god-level Heaven's Prides like Lu Ming did. Even if this guy's combat strength can't compare to those in the top 100, he's probably close to Di Feng, Mo, and the others. Our Talisman Puppet Sect has such a powerful martial way expert, and he's so young? Ji Mai whispered, full of shock and astonishment. He was ranked 107th on the list of top 1,000 talents, but he didn't think he could do this. Phew! Lu Ming let out a long breath. He felt that the true essence in his spiritual sea had been greatly depleted. In the storm of attacks just now, the hell-suppressing heaven skill had unleashed more than 20% of its power. Tianyun, you're using martial way. What's so great about you? If you're so capable, use the inscription way to fight us. A young man shouted, his eyes spitting fire. He was extremely ashamed and indignant. That's right. You're a Zongzi candidate, but you can only use martial way to fight. Who's convinced? A Zongzi candidate will compete for the position of Zongzi in the future, and then inherit the position of Talisman Puppet Sect leader. If he's only strong in martial way and weak in the inscription way, how can he inherit the position of sect leader and lead the Talisman Puppet Sect? The other Heaven's Prides also shouted. The eyes of the spectators flashed. Indeed, they couldn't deny that Lu Ming was powerful. If Lu Ming was just an ordinary disciple of the Talisman Puppet Sect, he would be respected by others because of his strong martial way, even if his inscription way was weak. However, Lu Ming's identity was different. He was a Zongzi candidate who would compete for the position of Zongzi in the future, and even become the Talisman Puppet Sect leader. He had to be strong in the inscription way to convince others. Otherwise, No matter how strong his martial way was, he wouldn't be qualified to inherit the position of sect leader. How about this? Ji Mai suddenly spoke, attracting everyone's attention. Was Ji Mai going to attack? Lu Ming also looked at Ji Mai. 2 months later, the sect will hold a competition to compete for the spot to enter the Sky Observation Platform. The Sky Observation Platform is the #1 cultivation sacred ground of the Talisman Puppet Sect. Apart from the other 13 Zongzi candidates, all the other young geniuses will participate. Brother Tianyun, why don't you participate in the competition and spar with them? Ji Mai said with a smile. Although he said it in a tactful manner, it was equivalent to inviting Lu Ming to participate in the competition 2 months later to compete for the spot to enter the Sky Observation Platform. Martial arts were of no use in that kind of competition. By then, Lu Ming's inscription Dao would naturally be able to tell how capable he was. All right, I agree, Lu Ming replied indifferently. Chapter 874. Hearing Lu Ming's agreement, Ji Mai, Yan Tonghua, and Meng Jia's eyes lit up. The prodigies who were thrown together by Lu Ming also had different expressions. Some of them gritted their teeth. They were determined to fight in 2 months' time to regain the face that they had lost today. Some of them were deep in thought. Lu Ming agreed so quickly. Could it be that his Dao of inscription was also extremely powerful? But how was that possible? Martial Dao was already so abnormal. How strong could the Dao of inscription be? The true yuan in your body will disperse in 2 hours. Lu Ming looked at the youths who were still lying on the ground, smiled faintly, and stepped into the air to leave. Hey Tianyun, wait for me. Bai Qi Shui immediately followed, like a little shadow. This made the rising sun and other prodigies who were pursuing Bai Qi Shui gnash their teeth in jealousy. But no one dared to find trouble with Lu Ming. What a joke. Lu Ming's martial Dao was so strong. Was he looking for trouble? Lu Ming and Bai Qi Shui swaggered out of the place. Your martial Dao cultivation is actually so strong? You actually didn't tell me? On the way, Bai Qi Shui stared at Lu Ming and muttered. You didn't ask me. Lu Ming said. You're so strong? You should be very famous. Why haven't I heard of you before? Bai Qi Shui showed a puzzled expression. Because I'm more low-key. I've always been low-key. It's normal that you don't know me. Lu Ming said shamelessly, which immediately attracted Bai Qi Shui's disdain. You're low-key? You defeated more than 10 god-level prodigies in one go. I'm afraid in 2 days, the news will spread throughout Liangyi Mountain. Bai Qi Shui glanced at Lu Ming and said disdainfully. Lu Ming touched his nose. He was also forced to do this, right? You really want to participate in the competition in 2 months? Bai Qi Snow asked again. Of course, I've agreed. By the way, what's the sky viewing platform? What's so special about it? Lu Ming asked curiously. The Sky Observation Platform is also known as the Sky Observation Ground. It can be said to be the #1 cultivation holy land of the Talisman Puppet Sect. It is said that one can come into close contact with the law of inscription at the Sky Observation Ground. The speed at which one absorbs the energy from the law of inscription is terrifyingly fast. However, the amount of energy required to activate the Sky Observation Ground is extremely terrifying. Therefore, the number of people who can enter each time is extremely limited. The other 13 Zongzi candidates have already entered. This time, only 3 of them will be allowed to enter the Sky Observatory. Therefore, the competition will be held in the entire sect. Only the top 3 will be allowed to enter the Sky Observatory to cultivate for a month. Bai Qi Snow explained. Lu Ming nodded. He had a rough idea. Are you confident? Bai Qi asked, blinking her large eyes. She was extremely curious. No. Lu Ming's reply made Bai Qi Snow stagger and almost fall. No. If you're not confident, why did you agree? Bai Qi Snow asked. If I agree, there will be at least 2 months of peace, right? Lu Ming smiled faintly. He was indeed not fully confident. After all, he had only been in contact with the inscription Dao for a short period of time. The other geniuses had been cultivating for more than 10 years. Especially for geniuses like Ji Mai, Yan Tonghua, and Meng Jia. Lu Ming was not confident of winning by relying on the inscription Dao. Lu Ming was confident that his spirit fire was not inferior to Ji Mai and the others. One had to know that Lu Ming had lit 10 spirit lamps at each level and reached the perfect level. No matter how talented Ji Mai and the others were, It was impossible for them to reach the perfect level. It was already very terrifying to be able to light up 8 spirit lamps at each level. Lu Ming's weakness was the use of spirit fire. His use of spirit fire had already reached the peak of the minute subtlety. In the eyes of ordinary geniuses, it was already very terrifying, not weaker than many god-grade geniuses. However, Lu Ming believed that geniuses like Ji Mai were definitely not just at the peak of the minute subtlety. Perhaps, they had already reached the heart of perfection realm. The higher one's mastery of the mental fire, the greater one's combat power would be under the same mental fire. His current weakness was the use of spirit fire. Bai Qixue was speechless. It turned out that Lu Ming agreed so that he could have 2 months of peace. Soon, the two returned to Cloud Peak residence. Yes, I have to buy another batch of blood essence to continue improving my bloodline. Back in his room, Lu Ming fell into deep thought. And the third bloodline, I don't know why? I still can't awaken it. Thinking of this, Lu Ming frowned. Many god-grade geniuses had awakened their third bloodline before reaching the 7th level of the spiritual sea realm, but he still couldn't awaken it. He could clearly feel that something seemed to be nurturing in his spine, but it couldn't awaken. He always felt that something was missing. Xiao Qing and Fatty also awakened slower than others. I don't know if it's good or bad. Also, I can't just let the competition in 2 months go. I have to shock those people so that they won't find trouble with me in the future. It's also very beneficial for me to take charge of the talisman puppet sect in the future. Lu Ming's mind was constantly spinning with various thoughts. However, it wasn't that easy to shock all these god-grade geniuses. If I can improve the use of spirit fire, I'll be much more confident. I wonder where I can train the use of spirit fire in the Heaven and Earth Mountain. Thinking of this, Lu Ming took out the map that Bai Qi Snow gave him and opened it. After a long while, Lu Ming's eyes lit up. The Mind Tempering Hall was a cultivation place that specialized in training the use of spirit fire. The Talisman Puppet Sect was indeed an overlord force that specialized in the inscription Dao. They had everything. Lu Ming was now a candidate Zongzi. Apart from a few places that he couldn't go, he could enter most of the cultivation places. It was a good opportunity to cultivate. Immediately, Lu Ming took out the origin stone and began to devour it to recover his true yuan. Before long, Lu Ming's true yuan had completely recovered. He left the Cloud Peak residence and headed to the Mind Tempering Hall. The Mind Tempering Hall was a large hall, but it was filled with arrays and could accommodate many people to cultivate. Lu Ming flashed his candidate Zongzi token and entered easily. After entering the hall, he realized that there were many light doors. At a glance, there were at least a few hundred of them. Lu Ming walked inside and chose a light door in a secluded corner. On the light door, there were words written: primary, intermediate, advanced, and peak. This should be a choice of difficulty. I'll choose the intermediate. Lu Ming pressed on the words intermediate, and saw the 2 words intermediate shining brightly. Then, he took a step forward and stepped into the light door. When he walked into the light door, he realized that he was in a spacious void. In this place, Lu Ming realized that the true yuan in his body was suppressed. Even his mental state was suppressed. Only the spirit fire could be used. Whoosh! A blue arrow pierced towards Lu Ming at lightning speed. An arrow condensed by the spirit fire. Chapter 875. Lu Ming's forehead glowed, and an even more powerful wisp of psychic fire shot out, forming an arrow that shot towards the arrow in front of him. But just as the 2 arrows were about to collide, the arrow that was shooting towards him suddenly turned nimbly, dodging Lu Ming's arrow and continuing to shoot towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming wanted to turn, but it was too late. He could only condense more psychic fire arrows and shoot them at the incoming arrow. That arrow was finally intercepted by Lu Ming and neutralized. But at this time, more arrows condensed from the surroundings and shot towards Lu Ming. These arrows were incomparably nimble. They were like nimble little snakes dancing in the air as they shot towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming controlled his psychic fire, but he couldn't keep up with the speed of these arrows. He could only release more psychic fire and use numbers to block the arrows. But this was very taxing on Lu Ming's psychic fire. Soon, his psychic fire was exhausted. Whoosh! Whoosh! With his psychic fire exhausted, Lu Ming could no longer block the arrows. They immediately hit his body, and he felt a tearing pain in his mind. His vision darkened, and in the next moment, Lu Ming discovered that he had returned to the door of light from before. It's only the intermediate difficulty, but it's already so difficult. It seems that my control over the psychic fire isn't that great. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and stepped back into the door of light. In the next moment, he was back in the void. Whoosh! Blue arrows condensed from the surroundings and shot towards him. It was said that in the mind-tempering palace, the amount and quality of the psychic fire condensed from the arrows was exactly the same as the person who entered. In order to completely block these arrows, one had to condense a psychic fire of the same quantity as the attacking psychic fire. Moreover, one psychic fire had to intercept the opponent's psychic fire. Only then could the psychic fire attack be completely neutralized. As long as one's psychic fire was stronger than the opponent's, then the number of arrows condensed would definitely be less than the opponent's. Just like Lu Ming had done before, he could use violent attacks to block the first few arrows. But soon, his psychic power was exhausted, and he could only take a beating from the back. But these arrows were too nimble. It was too difficult to perfectly block them. One had to have precise control over their psychic fire. At the same time, they had to be very good at using their psychic fire. Only then could they completely block them. Lu Ming was fully focused on controlling his mental flame to fend off the arrows that were shot from all directions. This time, Lu Ming lasted a little longer. Those arrows were too nimble. Lu Ming couldn't keep up with the opponent's speed at all by himself. He could only unleash a large number of psychic arrows to block them. In this way, his psychic power was exhausted again. The arrows pierced through his body, and Lu Ming was sent out of the door of light again. Continue! Continue! Lu Ming stepped into the door of light again and again, practicing the use of his psychic fire. Slowly, he became more and more familiar with the use of his psychic fire. He could barely keep up with the opponent's speed and neutralize those arrows. But he still couldn't do it perfectly. In the end, he would still be shot and sent out of the door of light. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had cultivated here for 7 days. Whoosh! 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 More than 10 arrows were flying in the air. Lu Ming controlled the arrows that were condensed from his mental fire and blocked the arrows that were flying toward him. In the end, when Lu Ming's psychic fire was exhausted, there were no more arrows shooting at him. With a perfect defense, Lu Ming smoothly passed the intermediate level. Right now, my use of the psychic fire has greatly improved. I'm already infinitely close to the heart of perfection realm. Lu Ming thought to himself. When two people had the same amount of psychic fire, the higher the level of their psychic fire, the more puppets they could control, and the stronger the puppets they could control, the stronger their fighting power would be. Moreover, those with a higher level of psychic fire would be able to carve formations and inscription talismans faster. Whether it was refining pills or forging tools, they would be stronger. This was the benefit of having a higher level of psychic fire. The subtle realm was the meticulous use of the psychic fire. Not a single bit would be wasted, and one would be able to display its full potential. The heart of perfection realm was just as its name implied. With a single thought, the psychic fire would move with unparalleled speed. At this level, whether it was controlling puppets or inscribing formations, they were all terrifyingly fast. To be able to inscribe formations in a few moments, just how strong was one? It could be said that if two people with the same amount of psychic fire reached the heart of perfection realm, they would be able to easily kill a subtle realm expert. As for the mind of perfection and Shinha realms, they were even more wondrous. The intermediate level is no longer enough for me to improve. It's time to choose the advanced level. At that moment, Lu Ming chose the advanced difficulty level and stepped into it. A few seconds after he entered, there was a flash of light, and Lu Ming reappeared. This is too fast. Lu Ming bitterly smiled. The arrows that appeared in the advanced level were ridiculously fast and nimble, able to make several hundred turns in an instant. Lu Ming's psychic fire arrows simply couldn't keep up. The moment he entered, he was killed before he could even block a single arrow. The difference was too great. It seems like I'll have to cultivate in the intermediate level for a while longer. With a bitter smile, Lu Ming chose the intermediate level and began to cultivate. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days passed. Thish! Thish! Lu Ming's use of the psychic fire was getting better and better. Under his control, the arrows formed from the psychic fire were becoming more and more nimble, moving at frightening speeds. Fush! Fush! He controlled an arrow and shot it through the middle of the arrow shaft of the opponent's arrow. The remaining power didn't stop there, and it even cancelled out the other arrow. Lu Ming could use one arrow to negate 2 arrows formed from the same amount of psychic fire. When no more arrows were formed, Lu Ming only had half of his psychic fire left. Lu Ming's use of the psychic fire had improved yet again, but he still felt that he hadn't reached the Heart of Perfection realm. Now, I should be able to try the advanced level. Lu Ming exited this place, chose the high difficulty level, and stepped in. Thish! An arrow as fast as lightning moved at high speed in the air, changing hundreds of directions in an instant, leaving a long trail behind. Lu Ming controlled an arrow, but he couldn't keep up with the speed of the other party. He controlled the 9 arrows to attack from different directions. Thish! Thish! 9 arrows in different directions flew through the air and blocked that arrow. With a bang, that arrow was finally blocked. But before Lu Ming could rejoice, 2 more arrows formed and flew toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming could only condense more arrows to block. This time, Lu Ming only lasted half a minute before he was teleported out. Continue. Chapter 876. He stepped in again and again, but failed again and again. Just like that, another 7 days passed. Lu Ming had been cultivating in the Spirit Training Palace for more than 20 days. Lu Ming was cultivating like a maniac. He was practicing his usage of the mental fire like a maniac. Whoosh! Outside the light door, a light flashed and Lu Ming's figure appeared. I know. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. Lu Ming muttered to himself, his eyes shining with excitement. After cultivating for so long, he finally caught a trace of inspiration. The inspiration to break through heart intent. Then, he sat cross-legged and carefully comprehended that inspiration. He sat there for an entire day. After a day, he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were calm, but they revealed a ray of confidence. Then he stepped into the light door and stood in the void. Whoosh! A blue arrow as fast as lightning made a few hundred turns in the air and shot toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming's glabella shone and an arrow condensed. Go! Lu Ming's mind moved and the arrow flew out. In the next moment, it accurately appeared in front of the arrow and collided with it. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the next moment, 2 arrows appeared and shot toward Lu Ming from 2 directions. Lu Ming's mind moved and 2 arrows also flew out. After making a few hundred turns in the air, they caught up with the 2 arrows and cancelled them out. Heart intent, this is heart intent. I finally broke through. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Whoosh! 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 The arrows flew everywhere, but they could no longer hit Lu Ming. In the end, all the arrows were blocked by Lu Ming. Lu Ming's use of the spirit fire had finally broken through and reached the early stage of heart intent. However, Lu Ming did not stop. Instead, he continued to cultivate. He did not choose the top difficulty but continued to cultivate in the high difficulty. The top difficulty was said to be for people at the level of intent. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had already spent 50 days in the mental tempering hall. There were still 10 days until the competition on the observation platform. On the other hand, Lu Ming's usage of the spirit flame had already reached the late stage of heart satisfaction. To advance from arcane subtlety pinnacle to heart perception advanced stage in just 50 days, if anyone were to hear of this, they would surely be flabbergasted. After all, heart focus was a realm that only 7th grade inscriptionists could grasp. 6th grade inscriptionists were already geniuses amongst geniuses if they could grasp it. Anyone could come to the spirit training hall, but whose progress would be this fast? It could be seen from this that Lu Ming had extremely high talent towards the Tao of inscription. It's time to go out and buy a batch of essence blood. It's been so long, there should be enough. Lu Ming pondered as he left the spirit tempering palace and flew towards the treasure pavilion. During this period, Lu Ming went to the treasure pavilion once and ordered a batch of demonic beast blood essence. Soon, they arrived at the treasure pavilion. Beauty, how's the demonic beast blood essence I ordered? Lu Ming asked with a smile. It was still the same beauty from before. Junior brother Tianyin, you're here. The beauty stared at Lu Ming with her big eyes, full of splendor. Now, Lu Ming was a celebrity in the talisman puppet sect. Who didn't know that he had fought against more than 10 god-level geniuses? The 50 Class 8 LV6 Demonic Beast Blood Essences and 50 Class 9 LV6 Demonic Beast Blood Essences that you asked for took a lot of effort. The beauty smiled and took out a storage ring. Thank you. Lu Ming smiled, put away the storage ring, and then handed the origin stones to the other party. It was a total of 60,000 origin stones. This was the price after the discount because he had bought so many origin stones. That's really expensive. Lu Ming sighed. He really couldn't afford the demonic beast blood essence. It seemed that after using this batch, he would have to hunt them himself. Lu Ming thought to himself. The origin stones that Supreme Nine Sons had left behind were only about 1 million. If he continued to use them like this, it wouldn't be long before they were all gone. I'll have to use them sparingly. Lu Ming made up his mind. After paying the origin stones, Lu Ming went to Cloud Peak residence. Along the way, when people saw Lu Ming, they all looked at Lu Ming with awe and curiosity. The competition will be in 10 days. Tianyun's martial Dao is strong, but his inscription Dao might not be. That's right. 10 days later we'll see. If his inscription Dao isn't good, no matter how strong his martial Dao is, he'll have to step down from the candidate Zhongzi's throne. Many people were talking about it, looking forward to the competition in 10 days. Lu Ming returned to Cloud Peak residence and saw Bai Qi seriously inscribing inscription talisman scrolls. Her jade-like fingers were slender and beautiful. As she danced in the air, inscriptions flew into the talisman paper. Peak of minute subtlety. Lu Ming's eyes moved. After not seeing each other for a while, Bai Qi had also made great progress. Her use of spiritual fire had reached the peak of minute subtlety. Not long after, a level 6 7th level inscription talisman scroll was successfully inscribed. Tianyun, you're back? Where have you been cultivating all this time? How's the progress? Bai Qi eyes lit up when she saw Lu Ming. It's okay, there's some progress. Lu Ming said. Some progress? Why don't we have a competition to see who's faster in inscription? Bai Qi said, her eyes flashing with eagerness. Lu Ming smiled in his heart. This girl had broken through and wanted to show off in front of Lu Ming. Sure, how do we compete? Lu Ming said with a smile. Let's go outside. How about we compete in inscribing array formations? Bai Qi said with some excitement. Okay, but since it's a competition, there needs to be some punishment, right? If you lose, how will you be punished? Lu Ming said with a smile. How will I be punished? Bai Qi blinked her big eyes. How about this: if you lose, you kiss me. If I lose, I'll kiss you. How about it? Lu Ming smiled. You? Who wants to kiss you? You rascal. Bai Qi face flushed red with embarrassment. Ha ha ha. Lu Ming laughed. He didn't mean it. It was just that he had a breakthrough in the use of spiritual fire and he was in a good mood. In addition, he hadn't seen Bai Qi for a long time. He just casually teased her to relax the atmosphere. If you don't agree, then forget it. Whoever loses will treat to a big meal. Lu Ming smiled and walked out of the room in big strides. Bai Qi stared at Lu Ming fiercely, but there was a slight smile in her eyes. Outside Yun Feng residence, there was a large open space. The two of them stood opposite each other. Let's begin. Bai Qi suddenly shouted. Both of her feet stepped on the ground. At the same time, her 10 fingers bloomed in the air. Brilliant inscriptions flew out and disappeared into the ground. Bas! On the ground, a formation immediately emerged, shining brightly. However, Lu Ming kept smiling and stood there with his hands behind his back. He didn't move at all. This guy, why isn't he moving? Humph! He's so arrogant. See how I'll teach him a lesson. Bai Qi snorted coldly. She took a step forward and the formation shone brightly. 2 snow-white eagles condensed and pounced on Lu Ming. At this moment, Lu Ming began to move. Lu Ming took a step forward and densely packed inscriptions appeared on the ground. The inscriptions intertwined with each other to form an array. Chapter 877. 9 formations, stacked on top of each other, emitting an illusory light. The 2 swords defeated the 2 eagles in one blow. At the same time, vines, chains, flame cages, and other things floated out, trapping Bai Qi in the middle. 9 formations? Bai Qi was dumbfounded and stood there in a daze. Just now, she clearly didn't see Lu Ming inscribing formations. At the end, she saw Lu Ming step out. Just one step and he actually inscribed 9 formations. Isn't this too terrifying? Isn't this speed too fast? Heart mastery. This is the heart mastery realm. Have you broken through? Suddenly, as if she thought of something, Bai Chi Snow's big eyes opened even wider, staring at Lu Ming in a daze. Some time ago, I was cultivating in the spirit training hall and luckily broke through. Why? Do you still want to compete? Lu Ming smiled. No more, no more. Bai Chi Snow shook her head repeatedly. Lu Ming smiled, took a step, and those formations all disappeared. Tianyun, you're really cunning. You've obviously broken through, but still agreed to compete with me. Too cunning, humph. Bai Chi Snow gritted her teeth and stared at Lu Ming. Thinking of Lu Ming's proposal to kiss her if she lost, she gritted her teeth even more. She thought that Lu Ming deliberately wanted to take advantage of her. He had obviously broken through, but still agreed to compete with her. Too bad. Weren't you the one who suggested the competition? I never said anything about it. Lu Ming smiled. Humph, cunning guy, there's no big meal to eat. Bai Chi Snow continued to snort coldly and strode back to her room. Between her brows, there was a trace of a proud smile. Hey, you can't go back on your words. Lu Ming shouted rather speechlessly. Shaking his head, Lu Ming walked into the courtyard, pushed open the door and walked in. As soon as he entered the room, Lu Ming was stunned. A little tortoise was lying on his bed with its legs crossed. It was holding a blood ginseng that was 10 times fatter than the little tortoise and was gnawing on it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. He ate with relish. Dandan. Lu Ming revealed a look of disbelief. It was actually Dandan. Didn't that guy slip away during the battle at Nine Dragon City? Why would he appear here? After all, this was the Liangyi Mountain. Even a martial emperor could not break the formation of the Liangyi Mountain. How did Dandan get in? Lu Ming, you're back. I've missed you so much. Seeing Lu Ming, Dandan finished a huge blood ginseng in a few bites and rushed towards Lu Ming. Fortunately, Dandan transmitted his voice, so Bai Chi, who was not far away, did not hear it. Lu Ming reached out and pinched Dandan's head, lifting it in the air. Then he stepped slightly, and an inscription formation appeared to isolate the sound. At the same time, the door was closed. Lu Ming, what are you doing? Let me go. Dandan shouted and waved its 4 feet. You're as timid as a mouse. How dare you come to me? Why did you run away so quickly during the battle at Nine Dragon City? Lu Ming asked. Don't slander me. What do you mean by I'm afraid of death? I'm wise. I'm far from recovering. I can't help much if I stay there. Of course, I have to act according to the circumstances. While those masters were out, I went to rob a treasure house. Haha, Dandan knew. You went to rob a treasure house? Who did it? Martial Emperor De? Lu Ming asked in surprise. Of course not. It's just a small treasure house. There aren't many things. Dandan's eyeballs were rolling in thought. I don't believe it. Give me half of it. Lu Ming said. No really. Let me tell you. Most of the things I got were elixirs. I used them to recover. I've recovered a lot. I can now inscribe level 6 and level 7 inscriptions and formations. I'm waiting for you. I'll give it to you. Let me go. Dandan shouted and kicked with its 2 claws. Lu Ming let go of Dandan. Dandan spat out a dozen jade talismans from its mouth and gave them to Lu Ming. It said, these are level 6 and level 7 inscriptions and formations. Look, I've been thinking about you all the time. Lu Ming picked up a jade talisman and scanned it with his mind. There were many complicated inscriptions inside. Even Lien Song didn't know many of them. Lu Ming nodded and took them without hesitation. He looked at Dandan curiously and said, How did you know I'm here? And how did you come in? I can sense your breath even if I'm far away. Haha, why would I come in here? Who am I? I'm the head of the top 10 beasts, the world turtle. It's more than enough to enter this formation. Dandan laughed. World turtle? Lu Ming caught the keyword. Dandan didn't use this word when he bragged before. Yes, world turtle. This time I ate a lot of elixirs and recovered a little. I finally remember what I'm called. World turtle. What do you think? Isn't this name domineering? Haha. Dandan danced with joy, looking pleased with herself. What's world turtle? Lu Ming was curious. He had never heard of this name before. You're the one who's a world turtle. Your whole family is a world turtle. Dandan was pissed. He pointed at Lu Ming and said, I only remember the name. I'm not sure about the rest. But this formation is really powerful. If I didn't recover a little, I wouldn't be able to come in. This guy. Lu Ming was shocked by Dandan. Not for other reasons. If the news of him sneaking into Liangyi Mountain spread, it would cause a huge uproar. Since you're here, stay here. Don't run around. After that, Lu Ming sat on the bed with his legs crossed. He took out the jade talisman Dandan gave him and looked at it. Dandan's jade talisman had a lot of level 6 and level 7 inscriptions and formations. It was an eye-opener for Lu Ming. He was so fascinated that he even forgot to devour the blood essence. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. 10 days later, the competition between the disciples of the Talisman Puppet Sect finally began. It was to fight for the 3 spots to observe heaven and earth. Lu Ming opened the door and walked out. Dandan was lying on his shoulder. Tianyun, when did you have a turtle? Bai Qi Shui looked over curiously. Oh, I picked up a wild turtle in the valley behind the mountain. It looks quite fat. I plan to cook it into soup after a while. Lu Ming answered casually. This made Dandan so angry that he rolled his eyes and almost exploded his turtle shell. You're the wild turtle. Your whole family are wild turtles. Dandan pointed at Lu Ming and shouted. And it's a king-level wild turtle. Interesting. Tianyun, let me play with it for 2 days. Bai Qi Shui stared at Dandan with her eyes wide open. Dandan was so angry that his body twitched. The two of them chatted as they flew towards the competition. Chapter 878. Inscriptions could be seen shining on the jade wall. Apparently, the jade wall was covered with inscriptions. At this moment, the white jade square was already crowded with people. Countless young geniuses from the Talisman Puppet Sect had gathered here. Not only young people, but many older people had also come to watch the competition. Look, Tianyun is here. He really dares to come. The geniuses will definitely not let him off. This time, he can't use his martial arts. Let's see how strong his inscription Dao is. I can't believe he's able to become a Zongzi candidate. As soon as Lu Ming arrived, all eyes were on him. Tianyun, I hope your inscription Dao won't disappoint me. Su Ri walked over. His gaze was cold and sinister as he glared at Lu Ming. What had happened last time was a great humiliation. That's right, Lu Ming. I hope you won't disappoint me. Guan Rong also walked past. He looked at Lu Ming with a sullen expression, full of provocation. At the same time, the geniuses who had been beaten up by Lu Ming glared at Lu Ming as if they wanted to bite him. You're asking for a beating again, aren't you? Lu Ming glanced at the geniuses, causing them to turn pale. They snorted and walked to the side. Geniuses flew over from time to time. Lu Ming saw Ji Mai, Yan Tonghua, and Meng Jia. The 3 of them were the main characters of today's competition and received everyone's attention. There were 13 people from the Talisman Puppet Sect who were ranked in the top 100 of the list of top 1,000 talents. All of them were Zongzi candidates and would not participate in this competition. Ji Mai, Yan Tonghua, and Meng Jia were ranked closest to the top 100 and were the most qualified to be in the top 3. They were also the most likely to win the Sky Observation Platform. Who do you think will get first place? It must be Ji Mai. He's ranked 107 on the list of top 1,000 talents. Although it hasn't been updated for a long time, I don't think anyone can surpass him. That's right, I think so too. Ji Mai should be number 1 without a doubt. As for Yan Tonghua and Meng Jia, their rankings are close. I wonder who's stronger. I wonder if there will be any dark horses. How many places do you think Tianyun will get? It is undeniable that Tianyun's martial Dao is strong. Among the younger generation of the Talisman Puppet Sect, there is no one whose martial Dao is as strong as his. I'm afraid the senior elders have taken a fancy to his martial Dao and thus conferred him as a Zongzi candidate. As for his inscription Dao, it's impossible for him to be that strong. At most, he can only cultivate to support his martial arts. That's right, it's impossible to be strong in both aspects. There's no such freakish person. Sounds of discussion could be heard all around. At this moment, figures appeared in the sky one after another, and the entire place quieted down. The leader of the Talisman faction, Bai Shijin, the leader of the Marionette faction, Du Songjue, and a few other elders had arrived. Inscriptions appeared in the sky, and chairs appeared. The chief elders sat down in the air. At the level of the grand elders, it was easy for them to inscribe formations in the air. All right, I'll be the host for today's trial. A figure stepped forward with a thunderous voice that echoed in the surroundings. It's Supreme Meng Chong. I didn't expect Supreme Meng Chong to be the host this time. An uproar took place in the surroundings, as many people were excited. Meng Chong was one of the 5 great supremes of the Talisman Puppet sect. They did not expect Supreme Meng Chong to be the host this time. Even the leaders of the 2 factions were present. It seemed like they were treating the trial with great importance. Many people rubbed their fists, preparing to perform well. If one of the grand elders was interested in taking them as a disciple, they would be rich. The trial is split into 3 stages. The first stage is to identify the formations on the white jade wall. The second stage is to challenge the 10,000 formation pagoda. The second stage is to compete with one another. Now, let's begin the first stage, Meng Chong announced, before flying toward the 10,000-meter-long jade wall. He arrived beside it and waved his hand, causing a landscape painting to appear on the wall. For us inscription masters, eyesight is extremely important. If we were to enter a dangerous place filled with formations, we would need to be able to identify where the formations are and where they are not. Take this landscape painting for example. There are many formations on it. What you need to do is to find the formations on the painting. Once you find a formation, you will be awarded a point. Those who have less than 10 points will be disqualified. Those who have more than 10 points will advance to the next round. Meng Chong reached out his finger and pointed at a corner of the painting. Following a loud roar, a ferocious tiger flew out from the painting. This meant that there was a formation on the painting. Now, do you understand? Meng Chong scanned the crowd and yelled. Yes. The crowd responded. Most importantly, you must be cautious when searching for the formations. Once you find the wrong one, you will be eliminated. Therefore, it's best not to act recklessly if you aren't confident. All right, in a moment, many paintings will appear on the white jade wall. The difficulty is the same, but the paintings are different. You can choose any one of them and identify them, Meng Chong announced. Following this, the 2 old men appeared at the 2 ends of the jade wall. With a wave of their hands, inscriptions entered the white jade wall. Immediately, the white jade wall that was 10,000 meters long began to shine, and images began to appear one after another. Every 1 meter, there would be a picture. On the entire white jade wall, there were a total of 5,000 pictures. These pictures were all different from each other. Some were mountains, some were rivers, some were demonic beasts, and some were scenes of great battles. Level 6 inscription masters, those below 30 years old can go up the stage. Meng Chong instructed. Swish! Swish! Instantly, numerous figures flew up and landed on the white jade wall. They randomly chose a painting. Let's go up too, Bai Qi Shui said. Lu Ming nodded. Together with Bai Qi Shui, they flew up and landed on the white jade wall. Each of them chose a painting. Not long after, over 3,000 of the 5,000 paintings were chosen. In other words, there were over 3,000 level 6 inscription masters below 30 years old. This number was considered not bad. Of course, most of them were ordinary and couldn't be considered as geniuses. Many people landed on the white jade wall and quietly observed the paintings to identify the arrays. The spectators in the surroundings also quieted down so as not to disturb the contestants. The painting that Lu Ming chose was a landscape painting. A swordsman with a long sword on his back was walking on a small mountain path. Lu Ming's gaze swept across the painting. Blue spirit fire spread out from his finger. He tapped on a small tree branch. Instantly, a silver battle sword flew out and then disappeared. At the top right corner of the painting, a number appeared, 1. It represented 1 point. Under the white jade wall, the others also waved their hands and tapped on the wall. Various lights flashed on the wall. There were weapons, demonic beasts, flames, lightning, and so on. The scene was gorgeous and dazzling. Looking from afar, it was very spectacular. In the beginning, everyone's speed of finding the arrays was very fast. However, after finding the 5 formations, many people slowed down. Chapter 879. Many people began to frown and ponder as they stared at the picture. Bas! Suddenly, Someone pointed his finger and the whole picture shone brightly. Then, the picture flashed and disappeared from the wall. Sigh. That person sighed. He had pointed wrongly and the picture disappeared. He was the first person to be eliminated. Seeing that someone had pointed wrongly and was eliminated, the others became more careful and didn't dare to make a move. However, there was a time limit to the competition. It was only half an hour. If one didn't have 10 points after half an hour, they would be eliminated. Some people were pondering, but some people were still very fast. They didn't seem to need to think as they pointed their fingers and found the array formations one by one. These people were all at the level of geniuses. Geniuses are geniuses. Their eyesight is extraordinary. They can identify an array formation just by pointing at it casually. That's amazing. Of course, an inscription master's eyesight is very important. If your eyesight isn't good enough, you won't be able to become a genius. Look, Ji Mai, Yan Tunghua, and Meng Jia are the fastest. They almost didn't need to think and have already found 20 array formations. That's amazing. Look, the other geniuses have also found more than 10 array formations. The first round of the test isn't difficult for them at all. Look, Tianyun is so fast. He actually found more than 10 array formations. Is his inscription Dao also so amazing? Some people were discussing and finally looked at Lu Ming with some surprise. That's normal. Tianyun's martial Dao is so strong that it shows that he's talented and intelligent. Even if he cultivates the inscription Dao, it won't be too bad. It's normal for him to pass the first round. That's right. Some of the older generation people said and the others nodded. During this time, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the other elders were watching with interest. However, their gazes fell more on Lu Ming. They were very clear that Lu Ming's first 5 levels were perfect. However, the inscription Dao couldn't rely on spiritual fire alone. Eyesight, the use of spiritual fire, the number of inscriptions and array formations that one had grasped, and the strength of one's understanding were all very important. If he only had a strong spiritual fire and was weak in other aspects, he would be useless. It was like a person who was very strong but didn't know any martial skills and had no combat experience. That person's strength couldn't be used to its original effect. This competition was also a test for Lu Ming. Otherwise, why would all of them appear at the same time in a competition between juniors? Lu Ming's expression was calm. His fingers continued to tap at a steady speed. It did not seem very fast and was slower than Ji Mai and the rest. Very soon, Lu Ming also found 20 array formations. However, his speed was still the same, neither fast nor slow. On the field, there were constantly people who made mistakes and were eliminated. Towards the end, many people no longer dared to act rashly. Their eyes were fixated on the painting, and their eyes were bloodshot. As for those who found more than 10 formations, they didn't dare to make a move if they weren't completely confident. Once the number exceeded 10, they would be able to pass and enter the next round. If they were to make another move and make a mistake, they would really vomit blood. Gradually, many people stopped and looked at each other. At this time, Ji Mai, Yan Tunghua, and Meng Jia had found more than 50 array formations. Their speed had begun to slow down. Sometimes they would need to ponder for a while before they would point. As for Guanrong and the other High God Realm geniuses, they had found more than 40 array formations. Their speed was also much slower. Every time they found an array formation, they would need to ponder for a while. Especially the Rising Sun, he had found 43 array formations. His brows were tightly furrowed, and his eyes were bloodshot. He stared at the picture on the white jade wall, but he couldn't find the 44th array formation even after a long time. At this moment, Lu Ming's speed was still neither fast nor slow. There was no change in his speed compared to before. He kept pointing his fingers and the number of arrays that he found was constantly increasing. 30, 40, 50. Very soon, the number of arrays that Lu Ming found exceeded 50. However, the speed did not decrease. Instead, it continued to increase. At this time, many people's gazes were attracted to Lu Ming. Look, Tianyun has found more than 50 array formations, and it's still increasing. What's going on? His speed hasn't slowed down. He's so fast, he's about to catch up with Ji Mai and the rest. How can this be? The surrounding discussions affected even more people. Countless eyes were looking at Lu Ming. At first, they were puzzled, but gradually, they were shocked. When Ji Mai's array formation reached 60, Lu Ming's array formation also reached 60. But soon, Lu Ming's array formation surpassed 60, becoming the first. This was shocking. Everyone did not expect Lu Ming to be able to find so many arrays. More importantly, the speed of his finger pointing was still constant, as if he didn't need to think. At this moment, even the participating geniuses under the white jade wall were looking at Lu Ming. The rising sun's eyes were bloodshot. After pondering for a long time, he still couldn't find 44 array formations. Hearing the commotion beside him, he also looked at Lu Ming. With one look, his eyes widened, revealing a look of disbelief. He screamed, "How is this possible? How can he find so many array formations? Impossible!" He couldn't believe it, and didn't dare to believe it. Gradually, even Ji Mai, Yan Tonghua, and Meng Jia stopped their search and looked at Lu Ming, their eyes filled with shock. Lu Ming was still unhurried. His finger pointed at the array formation at a constant speed, and one array formation after another was found. This Tianyun, don't tell me he can find all the array formations? This is too terrifying. Look at his speed, he didn't even slow down. I know from the beginning, he maintained a steady speed. This way, he would have enough time to think and identify the array formations. Ji Mai and the others were too fast in the beginning, so they had to slow down later to think. I think Tianyun will stop soon, he can't be that much faster than Ji Mai. Someone voiced out his opinion, causing a group of people to nod in agreement. In the Sky, by Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others had faint smiles on their faces. They were calm, and no one knew what they were thinking. However, as the number of array formations found by Lu Ming increased, his speed didn't slow down at all. The number of array formations he found continued to increase. Soon there were more than 70 array formations, and it was increasing at a constant speed. 71, 72. Those who thought Lu Ming would stop soon were dumbfounded, and their faces flushed red. All eyes were on Lu Ming, staring at him, wanting to see how many array formations Lu Ming could find. When Lu Ming pointed at the 76th array formation, he suddenly stopped and looked around. Huff, huff. Chapter 880. You see, I was right. He maintained a moderate speed at the beginning so that he had time to think. But he still has a limit. Now that he has reached his limit, I bet that he has reached his limit. It's impossible for him to find the next formation. The person who spoke earlier immediately began to speak again, winning the approval of the crowd. That's right, 76 formations should be his limit, but it's still terrifying. Ji Mai and the others probably won't be able to surpass this number. I didn't expect Tianyun's eyesight to be so good. Many people sighed and discussed. Lu Ming looked around in surprise. The reason he stopped wasn't because he couldn't find it, but because he suddenly felt that there were eyes looking at him from all directions. He was surprised, so he stopped. At this moment, he surveyed his surroundings. Seeing that there was nothing else, he shifted his gaze to the drawing again. He stretched out his finger and tapped it. 3 battle swords slashed out and disappeared in the air. Another formation was found. Then, Lu Ming began to point at a uniform speed. 78, 79, 80. In a few breaths, Lu Ming had found more than 80 formations, and it was still rising. Everyone was dumbfounded. The person who spoke up earlier almost bit his tongue, his face flushed red. He had just said that Lu Ming had reached his limit and couldn't find the next formation, but he was immediately slapped in the face. He felt his face burning. How many can he find? I don't know. Tianyun's speed is constant. It's impossible to guess. It said that there are a total of 99 formations in a painting. He can't find all of them, right? That's impossible. In history, there are very few people who can find all the formations. Even those supremes didn't have such attainments when they were young. The discussion continued without stopping. Ji Mai, Meng Jia, and the rest all stopped and stared unblinkingly at Lu Ming. At this moment, they already knew that they were bound to lose. There was no way they could beat Lu Ming. What they were more curious about was how many Lu Ming could find. Damn it, how did this happen? Rising Sun's eyes were red as he let out a low growl. He had been tortured by Lu Ming the last time and had always harbored a grudge in his heart. However, he couldn't defeat Lu Ming. He had always wanted to ruthlessly humiliate Lu Ming in this competition on the path of inscription. But now, Lu Ming's array formation was far superior to his. How could he humiliate him? Interesting. In the Air, by Xueqi, Du Songjue, and the others revealed interested expressions. Lu Ming was completely focused. His finger continued to point out without any intention of stopping. He had obtained Liao Zong's inheritance. How many inscriptions and formations did he know? In addition, the inscriptions and formations that Dandan had given him were even more numerous and complicated. There was a wide variety of things that he needed. The formations on these drawings were only used to test the younger generation. How could they stump him? The number of formations he found continued to increase. Soon, it exceeded 90, but he still didn't stop. Soon, 96, 97, 98. In the end, Lu Ming pointed out with his finger. The sound of a sword whistling resounded throughout the square. 99. Lu Ming found 99 formations. At this moment, Lu Ming finally stopped. This was because he discovered that there were no more formations on the drawings. At this moment, the entire square was silent. Everyone stared blankly at Lu Ming with their eyes wide open. They were speechless. This was too shocking. Lu Ming actually found all the formations. This exceeded everyone's expectations. Finding all the formations was something that had only happened a few times in the history of the Talisman Puppet sect. Could it be that Lu Ming's attainments in inscription were also so terrifying that they were even above his martial Tao? How was this possible? How could there be such an abnormal person in the world? Being good at identifying formations doesn't mean that his inscription skills are good. Identifying formations is a test of one's knowledge and eyesight. Perhaps this Tianyun has seen many inscriptions and formations. That's why he's so good at identifying formations. That's right. It's not like there weren't such people in history. Their cultivation and usage of spirit fire were very poor, but because they read a lot of books, their eyesight was very good, and they were also very good at identifying formations. Perhaps Lu Ming is such a person. Yes. It must be so. Many people agreed. It seemed that this was the only way their hearts would be balanced. Impossible, this is impossible. At this moment, a loud shout suddenly spread throughout the square. Everyone's gazes looked at the person who shouted. It was the rising sun. The person who shouted was the rising sun. The rising sun's eyes were red. He stared at Lu Ming and shouted, "Tianyun, it's impossible for you to identify all the formations. You cheated. You must have cheated." Lu Ming sneered. He looked at the rising sun and said, "Which eye of yours saw me cheating? Also, there are so many people here. Who saw me cheating? Perhaps you were lucky and chose a very simple picture. There are a total of 5,000 pictures here. It's normal for you to choose a simple one." The rising sun gritted his teeth and shouted. At this moment, he was completely filled with jealousy. He completely forgot that Meng Chong had said that the difficulty of these 5,000 pictures was the same. He said this because he suspected Meng Chong, a supreme being. Nonsense. As expected, Meng Chong's face darkened. He looked at the rising sun and snorted coldly. The rising sun shuddered. However, he still gritted his teeth and looked at Lu Ming. He didn't believe that Lu Ming could really find all the formations. He still believed that Lu Ming was lucky and chose a simple picture. Some people in the crowd also showed a thoughtful expression. Some people also had the same thought as the rising sun. After all, there were a total of 5,000 pictures on the white jade wall. Each picture was different. It was too difficult to ensure that the difficulty of all 5,000 pictures was the same. Perhaps, some of the pictures were relatively simple? Many people had this thought in mind and looked at Lu Ming with less astonishment. Lu Ming's face was calm. He looked at the rising sun and said, "So, the difficulty of your picture is very high? At least it's harder than yours." The rising sun said coldly. Lu Ming smiled and strode toward the rising sun. What do you want?" The rising sun's body trembled and he couldn't help but take a step back. The last time he was beaten up by Lu Ming, he was still traumatized. He was afraid that Lu Ming would be angry and beat him up again. What a waste. Lu Ming curled his lips. The rising sun's face was ashen. "You found 43 array formations? This is your result? You can be called a god-level genius?" Lu Ming mocked. "The difficulty is different. What do you have to be proud of? The rising sun gritted his teeth and said, Is that so? Difficulty? Haha. After saying that, Lu Ming suddenly strode forward. He walked to the rising sun's picture and waved his hand. Chapter 881. At this moment, Lu Ming pointed at least 30 times. Beasts roared, giant wolves, tigers, eagles, and other demonic beasts flew out and howled at the sky. In the upper left corner, the number representing the number of arrays began to soar. At first, it was 43. In an instant, it soared to 75. In just a breath, the number soared to 75. But it wasn't over yet. Lu Ming's fingers danced, and the sky was filled with finger shadows, constantly pointing at the arrays at a terrifying speed. The number continued to soar. In just 5 breaths, the number soared to 99. All the arrays were found. All the arrays were pointed out by Lu Ming in just 5 breaths. In the audience, countless people's eyes were popping out, and their mouths were as big as half of their faces. They all had the same expression, staring blankly at Lu Ming. Silence. The audience was silent, and not the slightest sound was made. This was too terrifying, finding all the arrays in just 5 breaths. This had never happened before. This guy. Bai Qi's beautiful eyes were full of splendor, looking at Lu Ming. Ji Mai, Yan Tunghua, Meng Jia, and the others were also shocked to the extreme. Is your drawing very difficult? Lu Ming's gaze turned back to the rising sun, and said indifferently. This sentence was like a slap on the rising sun's face, making his face flush red, as if blood was about to drip out. His eyes were bloodshot, and his body trembled violently, still in shock. Just now, he kept saying that Lu Ming's drawing was easy, and that it was just good luck. But now, he had racked his brains for a long time and only managed to find 43 of the drawings that he had chosen. He had also said earlier that his drawings were definitely more difficult than Lu Ming's. What was incomparably ironic was that the drawing that he couldn't find, the one that was harder than Lu Ming's, was found by Lu Ming with a wave of his hand, in just 5 breaths. Was there anything more ironic than this? Compared to Lu Ming, he was practically blind, a piece of trash. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. Tianyun, don't be complacent. Identifying formations is just a test of your eyesight. You've read a lot of inscription books and know a lot. But in the way of inscription, it's not only useful to know a lot, it also needs to be used. If you can't use it, you're just a nerd. Rising Sun growled. He didn't believe that Lu Ming's way of inscription was so powerful. Like some people, he thought that Lu Ming had just seen more inscription formations. Really? Lu Ming smiled faintly and turned to leave. He couldn't be bothered with the rising sun, not bad. In the sky, Bai Shijin stroked his beard and smiled. Bai Shijin, don't be happy too early. He has inherited the master's inscription formation. Naturally, it is not a small matter. It is natural that he can identify all the formations in the picture. The main thing is to look at the back. Du Songjue said. That's true. Bai Shijin nodded. They were talking through voice transmission. Naturally, others couldn't hear them. Well, half an hour is not up yet. If you want to continue searching, quickly continue. At this time, Meng Chong announced. Ji Mai, Yan Tunghua, Meng Jia, and the others cheered up and continued to search. Soon, half an hour was up. Everyone's results were out. A total of more than 3,000 people participated, and more than half were eliminated directly. Only about 1,500 people passed the first round. There was no doubt that Lu Ming came in first place. In second place was Ji Mai, who found 67 array formations. The third place was somewhat unexpected. It was a young man called Hu Ming, who had found the 65th formation. Yan Tunghua and Meng Jia tied for fourth place, finding 62 formations. Some of the other god-level prodigies found less than 60 and more than 40 formations. Bai Qi Snow's result was unexpectedly good. She found 45 formations, 2 more than the rising sun. The first round of the competition was officially over. Now, the second round, the 10,000 formation pagoda. Meng Chong's voice resounded throughout the square. Everyone's gaze turned to the east side of the square. There was a pagoda several thousand meters tall, towering into the clouds and occupying a vast area. That was the 10,000 formation pagoda. Meng Chong walked on air and arrived near the pagoda. I believe most of you know that the pagoda is divided into 36 floors. There are many formations inside, and the power varies according to the difficulty. The formations at the bottom are relatively simple. The higher you go, the more difficult it is. Only by deciphering those formations can you reach the next floor. The second round of the competition will be held in the 10,000 formation pagoda. The difficulty will be intermediate. Only those who pass 12 floors can proceed to the next round. Meng Chong announced. What? Intermediate difficulty? You need to pass 12 floors to pass? That's a high requirement. It's over. I just passed the 10,000 formation pagoda not long ago, and I can only pass the 9th floor. I can only pass the 10th floor. It's over. I'm probably going to be eliminated. As soon as Meng Chong finished speaking, the crowd lamented. Lu Ming was curious. He had seen the 10,000 formation pagoda on the map that Bai Qi had given him. It was a place for disciples of the talisman puppet sect to cultivate. Lu Ming had never been here before. Some lamented, while others remained calm. It was obvious that they knew what was going on. This was because most of them had attempted the 10,000 formation pagoda, and they had a rough idea of how many floors they could pass. All right, a total of 1,516 people have passed the first round. 500 people will enter each round. Now let's begin. Meng Chong announced. Instantly, many figures dashed toward the 10,000 formation pagoda, disappearing into a glowing door at the bottom of the pagoda. Ji Mai, Yan Tunghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming. The four of them went in at the same time. There's going to be a good show to watch. This Hu Ming can be said to be a dark horse. I wonder how far the four of them can go. Exclamations could be heard from the crowd. Lu Ming watched with interest. How does the 10,000 formation pagoda judge the results? How does it know how many floors a person has passed? At this moment, Bai Qi had already walked to Lu Ming's side. Lu Ming asked Bai Qi, "Do you see that? There is a huge jade tablet at the side of the 10,000 formation pagoda. Once someone enters, their name will be displayed, and the number of floors they have passed will be displayed behind their name. Also, the 10,000 formation pagoda is absolutely fair. Everyone who enters will face the same array." Bai Qi explained. Lu Ming looked to the side. Indeed, there was a jade tablet with names on it. There were a total of 500 names. At this moment, the word 1 was displayed behind each of the 500 names. Obviously, everyone was on the first floor. But soon the word tube appeared behind Ji Mai, Yan Tunghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming's name. The change happened at almost the same time. This meant that the four of them had entered the second floor at the same time. But not long after, the word 3 appeared behind their names. Chapter 882. So fast. Ji Mai, Yan Tunghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming are so fast. They actually reached the third floor so quickly. The four of them are already stronger than the others. Who is this Hu Ming? I've never heard of him before. How is he so strong? I heard that he's a disciple secretly trained by a grand elder. Everyone's eyes were glued to the jade tablet, observing the changes in the names on the tablet. At this moment, Ji Mai and the other three's names were shining brightly at the top. As time passed, the number of floors that the group passed continued to increase. Soon, Ji Mai and the other three had reached the 10th floor. At this moment, people had already started to be eliminated. The worst were those who reached the 5th floor, while some were at the 6th and 7th floor. From the 5th floor onwards, people were eliminated on every floor. The myriad formation pagoda flickered as the talisman puppet sect's disciples were sent out one by one. Those who were sent out sighed in sorrow. Soon, Ji Mai and the other three had reached the 12th floor. From the 13th floor onwards, their speed slowed down. Because from the 13th floor onwards, the difficulty would suddenly increase by a large margin. 2 hours later, out of the 500 people who entered, more than 430 people were eliminated. The elimination rate was terrifyingly high. Only 60 or so people passed the 12th floor. After passing the 12th floor, people were constantly sent out. The number of people left in the myriad formation pagoda decreased. At this moment, Ji Mai had already reached the 23rd floor. Yan Tunghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming had also reached the 22nd floor. Below them, there were people from the 20th and 19th floors. What floor do you think Ji Mai will reach? I estimate that he'll reach the 26th or 27th floor. The Myriad Formation Pagoda has a total of 36 floors. Every 12th floor, the difficulty will increase by a large margin. From the 25th floor onwards, the difficulty will increase by a large margin. That's right. I also estimate that Ji Mai will reach the 27th floor at most. Yan Tenghua and the other two will be even worse. Yes, that's about it. Even among the 13 Zongzi candidates, only a few of them can pass the 30th floor in the intermediate difficulty. Many people were discussing. As time passed, more and more people were sent out. In the end, only Ji Mai, Yan Tenghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming remained. At this point, Ji Mai was already on the 25th floor, while the other three were on the 24th floor. After reaching the 25th floor, Ji Mai's speed was like a tortoise's crawl. He had been stuck at the 25th floor for a long time, unable to reach the 26th floor. Not long after, Yan Tenghua and the other two also reached the 25th floor. An hour later, the number behind Ji Mai's name changed from 25 to 26. Ji Mai had reached the 26th level. This time, after 2 hours, Yan Tenghua and the other two had also reached the 26th floor. This time, the wait was even longer. After 3 hours, Ji Mai finally reached the 27th floor. Fortunately, they were all cultivators. Not to mention waiting for a few hours. Even if they had to wait for a few months, it wouldn't matter. This time, it didn't take long for Ji Mai to appear on the 27th floor of the pagoda. Coincidentally, less than 2 minutes after Ji Mai came out, a bright light flashed on the 20th floor, and Yan Tenghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming were teleported out one after another. The three of them could only reach the 26th floor. Alright, now that the first batch is out, let's continue with the next batch. Meng Chong announced. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. One figure after another rushed in. Lu Ming wasn't in a hurry, watching with interest. After the second batch of people entered, the names on the jade tablet all changed to the second batch's names. Time flew by and soon night fell. Inscriptions shone around the white jade plaza, forming pillars of light that illuminated the white jade plaza as if it was daytime. Soon, everyone was teleported out of the room. In the second batch, there wasn't anyone particularly outstanding. The highest was only on the 25th floor. Rising Sun was also in the second batch, and he was teleported out after reaching the 24th floor. Now the third batch, the rest of you can all enter. Meng Chong announced. The last batch had 516 people. Lu Ming, Bai Qi, and Snow followed the crowd and rushed into the pagoda. Countless gazes were fixed on the jade tablet. Tianyun has entered. I wonder how many floors he can reach. Tianyun is very good at identifying arrays, and the pagoda has something to do with identifying arrays. I reckon his results won't be bad, and he should be able to reach the 20th floor and beyond. Beyond the 20th floor? You think so highly of him? That's right, he's really good at identifying arrays. I reckon he can identify the weaknesses of many arrays. As long as his inscription Dao isn't too bad, his results in the pagoda won't be too bad. That makes sense, but the pagoda still depends on one's strength at the end. The 24th floor is his limit, and it's almost impossible for him to reach the 25th floor. Many people expressed their opinions. With a flash of light, the surrounding environment changed, and Lu Ming found himself in a valley. As soon as he appeared, arrays appeared around the valley. The arrays condensed into a dozen battle swords that slashed at Lu Ming. They're all level 6 arrays. Lu Ming took a glance at it and understood what was going on. As he took a step forward, inscriptions spread out along the ground and entered those matrices. Those matrices collapsed and disappeared. His surroundings changed once more. This time, he was in a forest. Lu Ming guessed that he had already reached the second floor. Arrays appeared in the forest as well. This time round, Lu Ming was even faster. With a single step, inscriptions appeared and destroyed the weaknesses of the arrays, causing them to collapse. The people outside were right about one thing. Lu Ming's eyesight was extremely sharp. With a single glance, he could identify the weaknesses of the arrays and destroy them easily. Lu Ming was incomparably fast as he charged through level after level. The environment of each level was different, and the arrays were different as well. However, it was not difficult for Lu Ming at all. His speed was unstoppable. So fast. Tianyun is so fast. He's already at the 10th floor. Outside, someone exclaimed. In the third batch, Lu Ming's speed was far in the lead. His eye of discernment is indeed extraordinary. Below the 12th level, the level of the formations isn't too high, and they're relatively simple. It's not difficult for him to break them. However, after the 13th level, his speed will definitely slow down. That's right. After level 13, it's not enough to rely on eyesight alone. Look, he has passed level 12. Someone exclaimed. Everyone's gaze was fixed on the Jade Monument, staring at the first place, Tianyun's name. This name was displayed according to the name recorded on the identity token. Lu Ming's identity token in the Talisman Puppet Sect was recorded as Tianyun. Soon the crowd fell silent. Chapter 883. On the Jade Tablet, the number behind Tianyun's name kept jumping, as if it couldn't stop Lu Ming at all. When Lu Ming reached the 20th floor, the fastest Sky Pride behind him had only reached the 12th floor. The difference was too great. The people around the square all shut up. Those who said that Lu Ming only relied on his eyesight also shut up. How could he break the array so quickly just by relying on his eyesight? They didn't believe it themselves. Damn it! Damn it! In the crowd, the rising sun roared. The other Sky Prides who had been beaten up by Lu Ming also had ugly expressions. The number of levels that Lu Ming cleared was still increasing rapidly. Soon, Lu Ming successfully broke through the 24th floor and reached the 25th floor. At this floor, Lu Ming's speed finally slowed down a little. This made many people let out a long sigh of relief. If Lu Ming's speed was still as crazy as before, they would really doubt whether Lu Ming was still human. It was normal for him to slow down. Even if he slowed down by a little, they would feel much better. In the 10,000 formation pagoda, Lu Ming stood in a desert. The wind whistled, blowing the desert and filling the air with sand and dust. Every grain of sand shone brightly, as if each grain of sand was set up with an array. The difficulty of breaking this array was quite high. Lu Ming's eyes flickered as endless sand appeared in his eyes. Swoosh, swoosh. His fingers moved, and thousands of illusions appeared in the air. Countless inscriptions were born from his fingertips, rushing in all directions and disappearing into the sand. Just now, Jimai took a full hour to break through the 25th floor. But 10 minutes later, the wind stopped and the desert disappeared, and Lu Ming appeared on the 26th floor. Amazing! Jimai exclaimed, his eyes filled with amazement. The other Sky Prides who had reached the 25th floor, such as Yan Tonghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming, were also shocked. They had all reached the 25th floor, so they knew how difficult it was. But Lu Ming only took 10 minutes to break through. It was terrifying. I wonder how many floors Tianyun can reach. Someone asked. No one said anything, even those who liked to talk before didn't say anything. Most importantly, none of their previous comments and guesses about Lu Ming were accurate. Their faces turned red and they were too ashamed to show their faces. How would they dare to express their opinions easily? They might be slapped in the face by Lu Ming again. They had better watch quietly. 26, 27 Very soon, the number of levels that Lu Ming cleared surpassed that of Jimai, who was in the first place. Moreover, he used a much shorter time than Jimai. But it didn't stop. 2 hours later, Lu Ming passed the 33rd floor and entered the 34th floor. It's the last 3 floors. It's said that the last 3 floors are very difficult. Even the other 13 Zongzi candidates couldn't pass them. The strongest ones stopped at the 35th floor. That's right. Although it's an intermediate level, the last 3 floors are still very difficult. I think Tianyun will stop at the 35th floor at most. Everyone was discussing and some couldn't help but express their opinions. At this time, the last batch of people had come out. Lu Ming was the only one in the 10,000 formation pagoda. Among them, Bai Qi Xue successfully reached the 25th floor and achieved a good result. Bai Qi Xue's talent was amazing. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been accepted as a disciple by a supremacy like Bai Shijin. Everyone waited quietly. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. It's moving. Tianyun passed it. Suddenly, someone exclaimed. The number behind Lu Ming's name changed to 35. 35 floors. This was already the strongest record among the young geniuses of this generation. In the 10,000 formation pagoda, light shone and endless inscriptions flickered. A large formation emerged, forming a terrifying saber light that slashed at Lu Ming. Each of these saber light could easily kill an existence at the peak of the 9th level spiritual sea realm. And here, the saber light shone, and there were hundreds of them. Of course, if one was slashed by the saber light here, they wouldn't really die. They would just fail and be teleported out. Lu Ming took a few steps and his fingers flew. Lines of inscriptions appeared and formed a large formation. Shields appeared and blocked Lu Ming from all directions. Those saber lights were all blocked by the shields. Then, Lu Ming began to step forward and condense the formation. He looked for the weaknesses of those large formations and began to crack them. However, on this floor, the large formations seemed to be endless. After one was cracked, another one immediately appeared. Lu Ming continued to inscribe inscriptions and crack them at a very fast speed. Time passed slowly. After 2 hours, no new formation appeared. Lu Ming successfully passed the 35th floor and appeared on the 36th floor. At this moment, the outside world was in an uproar. Lu Ming actually passed the 35th floor and entered the 36th floor, breaking the record of this generation. Of course, the other 13 Xueqi candidates hadn't come to the 10,000 formation pagoda for several years. The records they left were all from several years ago. Otherwise, with the strength of the 13 Xueqi candidates, who were ranked in the top 100 of the list of top 1,000 talents, they would naturally be able to pass the intermediate level of the 10,000 formation pagoda. After another 3 hours, Tianyun's name on the jade tablet shone brightly and emitted a golden light. This meant that Lu Ming had passed the level. There was a burst of cheers and shouts of disbelief. Lu Ming had passed the level. Was his way of inscription so terrifying? Or was his eyesight so terrifying that he could accurately find the weakness of the formation? In the 10,000 formation pagoda, a golden light shone and Lu Ming's figure was transmitted out. Countless eyes were fixed on Lu Ming. At this moment, some people already had looks of admiration on their faces. There was no doubt that Lu Ming had won the first place in the second round. Then, Meng Chong announced the number of people who would advance to the second round. There were a total of 200 people. Out of more than 1,500 people, only 200 people succeeded in advancing, while the rest were all eliminated. The elimination rate was really shockingly high. Now, the 200 people who have advanced will proceed to the third round. The third round is a battle of strength, Meng Chong announced. Then, with a wave of his hand, inscriptions shone in the center of the white jade square and a huge, ancient bronze fighting platform emerged. Then, Meng Chong announced the rules. The third round was a test of overall strength. 2 people went up on the platform to fight. Arrays, puppets, inscription talismans, and spiritual weapons could all be used. However, the inscription talismans had to be refined by themselves. The winner would advance and the loser would be eliminated. Until the top 3 were selected, they would be rewarded with cultivation at the observation platform. As for who would fight who, it was entirely up to Meng Chong to decide. Now, whoever's name I call will go up on the platform, Meng Chong announced, sweeping his eyes across the crowd. Everyone was refreshed. Tianyun. Chapter 884. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They did not expect Meng Chong to call out Tianyun first. Lu Ming was also stunned. He did not expect to be the first to fight. However, it did not matter to him. It did not matter to him who fought first. In a flash, Lu Ming rushed to the fighting ring. Rising Sun. Then, Meng Chong called out another name. The crowd fell silent and then they all smiled strangely. Meng Chong had deliberately called out Lu Ming to fight against Rising Sun first. Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile. This supreme martial artist Meng Chong was really interesting. In the crowd, Rising Sun's eyes flashed. He stepped into the void and walked to the fighting ring. Tianyun, although you passed the 36th level of the 10,000 formation pagoda, I guess you passed it by relying on your martial Dao, right? Can you pass it by relying on your inscription Dao? Rising Sun stared coldly at Lu Ming and said coldly. Around the white jade square, some people's eyes flickered. I think Rising Sun's words make sense. That's right. No one in the 10,000 formation pagoda saw how Tianyun passed the level. Maybe he passed it by relying on his martial Dao. His martial Dao is really terrifying. Yes, martial Dao can also pass the level. Why didn't I think of it before? Maybe it's true. Then it's not that great that he passed the 36th level. After all, his martial Dao is really powerful. If the other 13 Zongzi candidates were to challenge the intermediate level of the 10,000 formation pagoda, they could also pass it quickly. The discussion grew louder and louder. Many people had doubtful looks in their eyes. They all thought that Lu Ming passed the 36th level of the 10,000 formation pagoda by relying on his martial Dao. Just watch. No matter what, in the third round of the duel, one cannot use martial Dao. They can only rely on their inscription Dao. In front of everyone, we will soon know whether Tianyun's inscription Dao is strong or not. That's right. Just watch. Some people were more rational and did not rush to come to a conclusion. On the fighting ring, the rising sun smiled proudly when he saw that his words had aroused everyone's suspicions and denied all of Lu Ming's achievements. Humph. Tianyun, let's fight purely in the Dao of inscription. I'll let you know that it was your mistake to beat me up last time, and I'll return it to you tenfold. Rising Sun gritted his teeth. During this entire process, Lu Ming's expression remained calm and carefree, as if he didn't care at all. Are you done with your nonsense? If you're done with your nonsense, let's begin. The others still have to compete. Lu Ming said faintly. Based on his tone, it was as if he didn't care about the Rising Sun at all. Since you're looking for a beating, I'll fulfill your wish. Rising Sun said coldly. After saying that, he strode forward. Every time he took a step, an array would appear on the fighting ring. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen large arrays appeared on the fighting ring. These large arrays condensed monstrous flames and rushed towards Lu Ming. Bang! Lu Ming took a step forward. Inscriptions spread out from his feet as if they were alive and swam towards the array set up by the Rising Sun. Puff. Puff. The array set up by the Rising Sun was like a bubble that disappeared with a puff. The flames that filled the sky also disappeared without a trace. What's going on? The Rising Sun was shocked. He roared and waved his hands. Another array appeared on the ground. However, this array was only half formed when Lu Ming took a step forward. The Rising Sun's array, which had just appeared, disappeared with a puff. The Rising Sun roared and continued to inscribe the array. However, Lu Ming took another step forward. The Rising Sun's array was also half-formed and disappeared. Impossible! The Rising Sun's eyes were red. He roared and continued to set up the array. The blue spiritual fire between his eyebrows jumped crazily. However, Lu Ming was expressionless. With his hands behind his back, he casually stepped on the ground as if he was taking a stroll. Every time he took a step, the Rising Sun's array would collapse and dissipate. What a brilliant method to break the array. Every time the Rising Sun inscribes a large array, Tianyun accurately sees the weakness of his array and breaks it. A white-haired old man stroked his beard and nodded with a surprised expression on his face. Many people recognized that this was an elder of the Talisman Puppet sect. He was an 8th-level inscription master and was extremely powerful. Since an 8th-level inscription master had spoken, it couldn't be wrong. Many people gasped and their eyes were filled with shock. Tianyun was actually able to see through the weakness of the array of the Rising Sun before it was completed. In fact, he was only halfway through the array of the Rising Sun. This was simply too terrifying. If it was a complete array, it would be reasonable to be able to see through the weakness. However, when the array was only half-formed and not completely revealed, it was still unknown how it would operate. It was even unknown what inscriptions the other party was going to inscribe. Yet, he was able to find the weakness. This was too terrifying. Moreover, Lu Ming took a step forward effortlessly. However, he was able to break the array of Rising Sun quickly. His control of the mental fire was extremely shocking. This was a blatant slap to the Rising Sun's face. Just now, didn't the Rising Sun say that Lu Ming used martial arts to break the array in the 10,000 array pagoda? Then now, Lu Ming would let him see what he used to break the array. Martial arts or the Dao of inscription. At this moment, the Rising Sun's face was flushed red. He roared again and again. Every time the array was inscribed halfway, it would be broken by Lu Ming. This feeling was too unbearable. It was as if he had strength but couldn't use it. Every time he was halfway through, he would have to hold it back, causing him to almost vomit blood. In the end, he roared angrily and quickly retreated. With a wave of his hand, 9 huge puppets appeared and formed a battle formation before charging towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming sneered and took a step forward. All of a sudden, dense inscriptions appeared on the ground. A huge array emerged and 9 combat swords condensed. With a slash, the 9 puppets of the Rising Sun sect were slashed into 2 halves. At the same time, another array appeared under the Rising Sun's feet. Vines flew out and entangled the Rising Sun. Following that, the array shone brightly as fists formed one after another and charged towards the Rising Sun from all directions. "No, no, I admit defeat," the Rising Sun shouted, but it was too late. The endless fists drowned the Rising Sun. Only the Rising Sun's mournful screams could be heard on the battle stage. When the fists disappeared and the array disappeared, the Rising Sun was lying miserably on the battle stage. His body was covered in wounds and his face was swollen like a pig's head. It was impossible to recognize him as the Rising Sun. Looking at the miserable appearance of the Rising Sun, many people felt a chill run down their spines. Heart Mastery. The use of the spiritual flame has reached Heart Mastery. Amazing. It was still the 8th level inscriptionist who spoke. He stroked his beard and was full of admiration. What? Tianyun has reached Heart Mastery? Many people were shocked. Heart Mastery was only 1 step away, but the difference was like heaven and earth. Apart from the 13 Zongzi candidates, only Ji Mai, Yan Tenghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming were able to reach the Heart of Will's realm. Chapter 885. Now, no one doubted that Lu Ming was using martial arts to challenge the 10,000 formation pagoda. His eyesight was too terrifying. He could easily see through the weaknesses. His control of the spirit flame had reached the heart realm. Maybe he could really pass the 36th floor. This was too shocking. Tianyun's martial arts were so terrifying. Even his inscription art was so terrifying? How could the others survive? Ji Mai, Yan Tenghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming's eyes turned solemn. This time, Tianyun might be their strongest opponent. Haha, not bad, not bad. Du Songjue, Bai Shijin and the others nodded and laughed. It seems like this kid is quite vengeful. Bai Shijin laughed. He was referring to the incident where Lu Ming beat the Rising Sun up. A real man should be like this. When you're bullied, of course you have to fight back. I feel like Lu Ming's temperament is quite similar to mine. No wonder this kid could cause a war in Jiolong City. Du Songjue smiled while stroking his snow-white beard. Since knowing that Liao Tsong was assassinated by Martial Emperor De, Du Songjue and the others of the puppet sect had given up on the idea of relying on Martial Emperor De. Now, they were thinking about how to deal with Martial Emperor De. Therefore, Du Songjue's opinion of Lu Ming had changed greatly. Naturally, he hoped that Lu Ming could become stronger. It would be best if he could lead the puppet sect to fight against Martial Emperor De in the future. That's true, but Lu Ming's formation is a fist. Where did he learn it from? Why haven't I heard of such a formation before? Bai Shijin asked doubtfully. The formation was formed into a fist, and its power was not very strong. It was as if it was specially made to beat people up. They had lived for thousands of years, but they had never seen such a formation. However, they would soon know the answer. Since you're looking for a beating, I'll fulfill your wish. What do you think? This is the formation I've researched 2 days ago. It's pretty good, right? Lu Ming walked up to the Rising Sun and smiled. Lu Ming had learned countless inscriptions from Dandan, and all formations were composed of inscriptions. Lu Ming had nothing to do for the past 2 days, so he conceived such a formation. It was very effective to beat people up. High in the air, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others were dumbfounded, exchanging glances with each other. As it turned out, this formation was developed by Lu Ming himself and was specifically used to beat people up. At the same time, they were also shocked that Lu Ming was able to develop his own array formation. This was something that could only be done with an extremely solid foundation. Rising Sun's eyes were so swollen that he couldn't open them. His body moved with all his might, and he was terrified of Lu Ming. Tianyun wins this battle, Meng Chong announced. Lu Ming smiled and left the fighting ring. Someone went up and helped Rising Sun off the stage. Tianyun, good fight. Bai Chi Snow was so excited that her face was flushed red, and she clenched her fists tightly. The competition continued. Meng Chong called out names, and the contestants fought one-on-one. Lu Ming stood below, looking at the fighting ring. Lu Ming had seen a lot of battles between cultivators, but he rarely saw battles between inscription masters. Lu Ming watched with interest, watching all kinds of array formations flickering, and all kinds of puppets pouncing on each other. It was quite exciting. Meng Chong seemed to have done it on purpose. Those high god realm geniuses avoided each other from the start. Soon, it was Bai Qi Snow's turn. Bai Qi Snow's opponent wasn't strong, and Bai Qi Snow easily won. One day and one night later, all 200 contestants had finished their battles, leaving only 100 contestants. The next 100 contestants continued to fight one-on-one, and Meng Chong called out names. This time, Lu Ming was at the back of the line. When he went up the stage, his opponent directly admitted defeat. This person wasn't as strong as Rising Sun, and the Rising Sun was easily defeated by Lu Ming. Naturally, his opponent quickly admitted defeat to avoid humiliating himself. Soon, the top 50 contestants were born. Bai Qi Snow didn't advance to the next round. She met an expert and lost. Next was the competition to determine the top 25 contestants. Those who could enter the top 50 were all geniuses among geniuses. Among them, there were more than 30 high god realm geniuses, and the rest were quasi-god realm geniuses. The competition continued. This time, Lu Ming Snow's opponent was a quasi-god realm genius. However, under Lu Ming's lightning-fast array formations, the quasi-god realm genius was quickly defeated. His spiritual fire had reached the Heart's End realm, and his speed of engraving array formations was too fast. Other than that, Ji Mai, Yan Tunghua, Meng Jia, and Hu Ming also won the competition in a crushing manner. There was no suspense. The top 25 contestants were born. To everyone's surprise, several high god realm geniuses were defeated by several newcomers. Without a doubt, these newcomers were all rising geniuses, and they were very strong. Next, among the 25 contestants, this old man will choose Ji Mai to enter the top 4. The remaining 24 contestants will fight one-on-one, until the last 3 contestants will fight with Ji Mai for the top 3. Do you have any objections? Meng Chong's voice echoed throughout the square. No objections. I have no objections. The other 24 contestants voiced their agreement. Ji Mai was too strong, and they would lose without a doubt if they fought him. It was better to let him advance to the next round, and they wouldn't have to face him in advance. The others naturally agreed. This time, Ji Mai's strength was publicly acknowledged as the #1 contestant. Good, since all of you agree, Ji Mai won't fight for the time being. Next, Yan Tunghua against Gao Lu. Meng Chong announced. Yan Tunghua flew up. His opponent was a beautiful girl, who was also a high god realm genius. Yan Tunghua belonged to the puppet faction, and he was good at controlling puppets. Gao Lu belonged to the talisman faction, and she was good at inscription talismans. Gao Lu took out 6 6th-tier 9th-tier inscription talismans, which shone with various lights. Some were used for protection, while others were used for attack and trapping. But Yan Tunghua waved his hand, and 12 puppets appeared. These 12 puppets weren't 6th-tier 9th-tier, but 6th-tier 10th-tier. The 6th-tier 10th-tier had surpassed the 9th tier of the spiritual sea realm, and was equivalent to the perfected spiritual sea realm. Inscription talismans and puppets were similar to demonic beasts, and corresponded to martial arts. The strength of an inscriptionist had little to do with the level of spiritual fire. It mainly depended on the arrays you inscribed, the inscription talismans you mastered, and the puppets you controlled. For example, Yan Tunghua controlled 12 6th-tier 10th-tier puppets at the same time, which was equivalent to 12 experts at the perfected spiritual sea realm attacking at the same time. Moreover, he had set up an array, which was extremely powerful. Yan Tunghua ranked 115th on the list of top 1,000 talents, and his strength was terrifying. The powerful puppets easily tore through Gao Lu's attack and defense, and defeated her easily. After that, Meng Jia and Hu Ming did the same. They displayed amazing strength and defeated their opponents to enter the top 12. Tian Yun against Feng Tai. Meng Chong's voice rang out. Lu Ming stepped forward. When he saw his opponent, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Feng Tai ranked 183rd on the list of top 1,000 talents. He was very strong, and he was also a genius that Lu Ming had beaten up last time. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.